And we're live. Welcome to the Path Forward. It is Friday, August 21st. And after a long, arduous scheduling process, finally got Dave on my show. And I did it in a roundabout way. I told Tommy I wanted to stream when he wanted to do a show. So you'll see this on Tommy's channel. You'll see it on my channel. Won't be live on Tommy's channel. It'll be previously recorded and probably edited because Dave and I usually go down the rabbit hole. And when we do, there's strikes involved and usually
know how many episodes I've done with Dave where the thumbnail is eyes wide shut and something along the lines of cannibal pedophile. I'm not editing shit. Most people look at me and Dave and they go, "You're really into pedophilia." I'm like, no, we're into researching the power structure around it. We're not into
it. The appalling thing is I do have a filter. This is what made it through.
Yeah, that's another point. That's a good point.
I know. It's what's called a coarse filter.
Yeah. So roundabout way, but yeah, I guess very smooth, Steve. I don't know if that was your intention, but very smooth way of getting us on.
Yeah.
What's up? Hold up. What's that? We're live, and my wife is talking to me.
Yeah,
that's usually how that goes. I usually have a dog nudging me in the leg, going, "Hey."
No, Tom,
you got any food there? Are you hungry?
Tom's hungry.
I am sitting there.
Okay.
No podcast here.
Hold on just a second. What?
Go to.
We're live right now.
So go into the porch. I don't know what to listen to.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I hear that pedophilia makes you glow.
Yeah,
oh my God, Dave!
In
really
more ways than
glowing.
one. Yeah,
he's a fan. Like he's literally glowing.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of pedophilia, did you happen to see the Alicia Silverstone drop of Courtney Love, basically confessing to eating children? You think it's real?
I did. You know, there's so many of those. Some of those come through the. You know, this guy TP. My wife is insisting I move. Somehow she doesn't want to listen to me talk about pedophilia in Hollywood. I can't imagine why. She made the funniest comment the other day, which I'm going to tell you. You know the woman who killed her kids, right?
Yeah. The one that got $800,000.
Yeah. I think the story that really ought to be said there is that she was drugged out of her gourd. And what I can tell you is that a woman who kills her 3 kids and then throws herself out a window, I think the case for insanity is pretty strong.
I would agree.
And even if she's guilty of shit of something, the biomedical community is guilty of something here too. And
what was she on, Dave? Was she on SSRIs? Was she
on everything? 13 different drugs.
Holy shit.
And they were staggered, so it's hard to say exactly what was going on. But her mother was screaming at the medical community to help her. And the medical community ignored her. I talked about a drug that makes people go crazy, a drug called Keppra. And it turns out that it makes you angry. It's called Keppra Rage. I've experienced it personally, not myself. And a friend of mine who's a distressed asset investor emailed me and said, "I heard you mention Keppra." He said, "My son was on it." He said, "I was literally hours away from hiring a bodyguard to protect his family from his son." And so this woman, so the story here is the medical community failed miserably. Making the case for insanity is trivial because any woman who kills her 3 kids and throws herself out a window is insane. I don't know how you handle this situation. What I do know is the rest of her life is going to be a living hell because she's in a wheelchair and has to live with having killed her children.
In prison.
In prison.
Yeah.
In prison. And what's astonishing, get off me, the dogs. And what's astonishing,
you know, Dave, the entertaining part of this is just watching you move around and all of the camera movement.
Yeah, I know.
I don't mean to interrupt. I was gonna say this sounds like the best. This is like the best found footage of a beginning of a movie of like the biomedical community. And Dave's looking around. He's like, "Get off me!" And then it cuts out.
The astonishing thing is how many people think it's just a clear-cut case of this woman should be hung from the neck until dead, and she's just a guilty person. I go, you know, there are issues here, and I understand the women defending her, I presume a bunch of them have had postpartum depression, have been put on SNRIs, and have been driven nuts by something. So it's not as simple as everyone says. And then I read an article today that talked about how this is a kind of an insanity in society supporting her. I don't support her. I don't endorse killing children. The funny thing my wife said the other day was they weren't even at the age where you want to kill them yet. That's referring to teenagers. But the article said this is kind of like the people who think that Tyler Robinson didn't kill Charlie Kirk. And I'm going, you just took the story to Tyler Robinson?
You can't deny the influence of medic. It's not one thing like alcohol where you go, well, he was drunk, and obviously these totally are different. SNRIs, SSRIs. I mean, you're not just messing with serotonin, norepinephrine, adrenaline. You're talking about like the actual cholinergic pathways of this stuff. It changes the framework of your brain. And when you're on multiples of these things, I mean, drug interactions are synergistic. So it's like add 2 things together, they're wild. Add 3, it can go in any which way. You're up to 12 or 13. And that doesn't mean she's innocent. But to not take that into account, to look at somebody and go, this person was clearly insane. They were in a window and they jumped. And then you zoom out and you go, well, they're on the 90th floor of the World Trade Center and they were burning alive. Was there maybe another factor in them jumping? If you isolate somebody jumping out of a window, sure, that is insane. But to look at this and go, none of those medications were involved. I mean, are they trivial? Are they aspirin and ibuprofen? Well, then no. Are they psychiatric drugs? You absolutely have to hold them accountable.
So 2 supporters of her showed up. 2 supporters of her, which are interesting. One was Mary Bowden. She's got a longer name than that, but I'll just carry Mary Bowden.
Mary Bowden, yeah. She's an MD. I know who she is. Yeah, I know her.
Yeah, and she fought the vaccine and everything. The other one who defended her was Candace Owens.
Isn't that the name? Mary Bowden had an axe, gave her father 40 whacks. When her mother saw what she had done, she gave her mother 51. You ever heard
something like that? It's not Mary Bowden, though.
Pretty sure it is. Sorry.
You know?
Well, there's a couple of parts to that, right? So the medical industry is cooked for a lot of reasons, and there's a variety of reasons for it, right? Reason one is the insurance companies have basically, and private equity have stripped the ability for doctors to actually do any preventive or, diagnostic medicine. They just treat the symptoms. And that's where the drugs come in, because the pharmaceuticals and the PDR is all written basically by the pharmaceuticals. So you have these really toxic drugs. And I'll give you a case in point. When I came back from the desert, I was acting out in all kinds of ways. And went to like 4 or 5 VA doctors. And by the way, this is the funniest part of that story. I went to 4 or 5 different VA psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, whatever, right? There's no record of it in any of my records. But the first thing they wanted to do was prescribe me SSRIs for our ADHD meds. And so they put me on Strattera, which was a ADHD drug. And you want to talk about rage, man, that like set me up here. And so full stop after that, didn't go back to that game. Then another doc that I went to said, we got low T, so we should treat that. That'll help your symptoms, right? So they put me on the shots, where they give you a shot in the ass once a month. And basically after like 3 days, it would wear off. And so I'd be back down in the bottom again. So they went to twice a month, and then it was just peaks and valleys, right?
Right.
So imagine if I was taking Strattera and doing the testosterone and getting the aggression from the testosterone and then amplifying it with the Strattera. Guess what? Rage monster. Completely. And here's the other part of it too. When the rage part came after taking Strattera, there was no way to ground. When you're up here, you're up here. You can't come off the ledge until the drug wears off. And that's the part they don't tell you. Like they put me on Adderall too. That was the other one. I was awake for a week. I didn't sleep for 7 days. I was hallucinating, all kinds of shit going on, right?
I mean,
turns out a lot of my issues were my diet and PTSD. Who'd have thought?
sure. But I mean, I look at in my own path, right? I lost my brother to suicide, and in 2016, I finally moved home, saw a doctor, blah blah blah. And later on, I saw better doctors who were incredible, and they were like, "We got to get you off these." But the first thing was like Depakote, like mood stabilizer, so you're less fluctuating. And then it was like, and then we're going to give you this so you can sleep. We're going to give you this so you can wake up. And I was on all these things. And in 2019, I don't know if it was rage, but I don't remember any of this. I just remember going to bed and listening to a documentary like I do every night. And I woke up 4 or 5 days later in a hospital bed with my ankles and wrists tied down. And I asked what happened. And my dad said that he found me and I was just like yelling at him. So they threw me in the car, drove me to the hospital. I started fighting the nurses. They put me on the table on the bed. They asked what drugs I was on, and they're like, "Our son's not on drugs." And they go, "Nobody ever thinks their son's on drugs." They do a quick blood test. Hey, your son's actually not on drugs. And apparently, my dad sat on my chest as one nurse on each arm and each limb, and they were giving me shots of Valium, and I was still like screaming and like trying to break up. So finally, the anesthesiologist just lost his patience, and they stopped treating me as like he's having a breakdown, and he was just like, "Hey, fuck this kid," and he came over and just took a mask of propofol and just put it on my face. Now I was just out, but there was nothing leading up to that. It was a normal week, and I just remember going to bed and waking up. And if you look at me, you go, "Well, this is a violent kid." I'm a nerd, biology degree, none of this shit, and it took me to fighting nurses in a hospital and then waking up a week later and they said you're eventually going to regain your memory and it's going to be traumatizing. It's been 7 fucking years. I don't remember anything. And that was with 3 drugs, I believe. As Steve was saying, what goes on when you add a 4th or a 5th
or a 13th
or a 13th? And what the fuck? If I woke up and they said you killed your parents, I would not be surprised I did that. And to this day, I'd be going, why did I do that? I have no recollection of 96 hours of my life where I went from just being an annoying faggot who talks a lot to legitimately fighting hospitals.
Well, what we call normal.
What we call Tommy. The deeper definition is a manic faggot. But my point is I mean, to what Steve was saying is, it's not just like, oh well, he's on 1 or 2 things. I mean, with that experience is, in 200 years ago, you'd say I was going through an exorcism. So what this woman is going through is, you have to hold them accountable, but no one's gonna fucking do it. Sorry for rambling on, but I just wanted to back up Steve's point with my own.
No, I mean,
it's not my show. I'm on your show. Sorry.
It's a valid point, man. I mean, just look at vaccines. Vaccines are a perfect example of how the pharmaceutical industry has completely changed the medical industry. I mean, if vaccines are so safe and effective, then how come they need indemnity, unlimited indemnity?
The only consumer product in the world that has it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why? I mean, I have a vaccine injured kid, and I've dealt with that for almost 25 years. And I can tell you,
what's the
she's got a variety of health issues, right? She's
Okay.
She's allergic to almost everything. I mean, she's allergic to gluten, grass, tree nuts, coffee, a host of things. Try finding something without gluten in it. Try finding something without high fructose corn syrup. She's allergic to corn. Try finding something that doesn't have nuts in it. I mean, it's all the alternatives, before gluten-free, all the alternatives had nuts or corn in it. And so we eat a lot of fresh foods. And now when I look at the whole gluten allergy thing, how much of that is related to vaccines? How much of autism is related to vaccines? How much, they put, and I've done the deep dive on this, right? And I'll tell you this, I've had doctors against the wall. I've had them by the throat against the wall. That's how sick of the medical system I am.
I don't doubt that at all. No
problem.
So the gluten allergy is called celiac, and I had childhood celiac, and I don't think I was over vaccinated because I grew up in an era when you got maybe 2 vaccines.
And it should still be that way.
But the pervasiveness of celiac now is and as well as autism. The rates of these are not things you can deny. Where you it's up 1 or 2%. They're up from like 1 or 2% to like 36%. It is out of this world, and they have the RFK interview the first time he went on Rogan. I think it's probably the best breakdown of vaccines I've ever heard in any form of media. Is the invincibility they have legally, and we hear about this story with the kids. How many lesser stories have we not heard, or didn't result in a death, but maybe they abused the kids or destroyed a family?
I'm telling you, man, it was like a light switch went off, and I can tell you exactly which fucking shot it was too. And
which one?
Here's why the fuck do we give infants 10 or 12 shots? Why do we do that?
Day one.
Yeah.
Why do they need Hep C?
What they don't. Just like most teenage girls. And by the way, the Hep C, I've been told, and I won't tell you, I can't say who told me, but it was a doctor. Hep C is the one, and what's the other one? HPV. HPV is the one, along with Hep C, that causes seizures in girls that get it under the age of like 15. And I just happen to know somebody whose kid got that shot and now has seizures. Go figure.
Right.
I mean, the whole and I was a CISO in the industry, so I was and worked with private equity owned the firm that I worked with, and let me tell you, they're open about the fact that they've turned healthcare into a margin business, so the throughput has to go up so they make money, and then they load the company with debt and then sell it off, and and
then it goes bankrupt.
Yeah, and it's an insidious, very insidious business. I think private equity should be banned from owning any healthcare, full stop.
I'm told in New York State, it's not legal for a hospital to be privately owned, to be a for-profit hospital. I heard in New York State. I was told that by a doctor here. I haven't confirmed it, but that would be interesting.
Your state's run by communists, so that doesn't surprise me.
Gretchen Morgensen and Josh Rosner wrote the book. Oh God, what's the title of the book? I'll look it up. About private equity owning hospitals, and it's a horror story. It's a horror story.
I can't get into it because I signed an NDA, but suffice it to say that what I saw, the reason I left, because there was too much risk, way too much risk. And they were making decisions where I'd sit in the board meeting and go, what the fuck are you doing? What the? When the first words out of your mouth in a board meeting are, what the fuck, there's a lot of danger there. And I can tell you, I went to several board meetings where I was like, what the? So that's just one company. I imagine all the other practices, all the other healthcare, like laboratories and healthcare, when you have like medical devices, ambulatory devices, and private equity owns all that. Imagine, but the long story short here is that they've turned it into a margin business. So now the level of care has gone down, and doctors are restricted from what they can treat. Like if you go in and you have a bump on your arm and you go in for the bump on the arm, they may see a tumor in your throat, but they can't do anything about it until you come back again for that. That's how much the insurance companies and private equity have ruined healthcare. It used to be you go see a doctor, they'd see what's presenting, they'd test you for other things, and they'd treat you to heal you. Now we don't treat people to cure them. We just treat the symptoms.
Well, I haven't signed an NDA, and I've done so many shows that I don't know which one's going to kill me. But a good example, and I mean to refer this in the most respect because I don't want. I'm being very disrespectful as I always am. But Dr. Aditi Bhargava, the head of UCSF mRNA research at UCSF Med School. UCSF is Harvard Med School of the West Coast, and she was involved with the mRNA vaccine. She is not politically aligned with me at all. She actually campaigned for Biden. She reached out to me after seeing some of the shows I had done and said, "Can I come on your show? I have to talk about how corrupt this is." It was after Biden said, "We're losing our patience." She said, "Mike, this is a very left woman." She reached out to me and said, "Can I come on your show?" And we did a show with the PowerPoint. She talked about the mRNA, the liposome vesicles and everything. But think about that. Think about how much that had to push someone to look at me and go, "This fucking like neo-Nazi MAGA guy, but I'm going to come on his show because I have to talk about this." That's just one woman who had the courage and the quality of spirit to do that. Talking about the mRNA vaccine. Yeah. And that's a lot because a lot of people were talking about it, right? Malone, McCullough, whoever. And it all happened at once since the age of media and blah, blah, blah. What about all the shit that happened in decades past where there wasn't emails and podcasts and it was Walter Cronkite and whatever the fuck was owned by the CIA, and somebody went, "Hey, we're doing this HPV thing or we're doing this polio thing and this is injuring people," and they were just told to shut the fuck up. Like, that's the level it's at right now. And
it's worse than that, Tommy. They're taking away licenses for people doing that.
Well, that's the other thing.
Mary Taylor Bowden's a perfect example. She's fighting the state board, and I think they took. That's why doctors were against the wall, because they used bullshit terms like causation or correlation is not causation. Yeah, you were against the wall.
I believe they took. I might be wrong. I believe they took Dr. McCullough's license, and to people go, "Well, you got to stand up and do the right thing." It's easy for me to do that because I'm on a fucking podcast and I'm just an annoying faggot. But when you go to med school and then do 8 years of residency and 2 years of fellowship and then 20 years of practice to pay off your loans and then become the most published cardiologist in world history, who Dr. Peter McCullough is, he is Michael Jordan of cardiology.
Yeah.
And he stood up, and I'm pretty sure they stripped his license. I might be wrong on that, but they stripped his license.
They've stripped a lot of licenses. That's why the AMA, and by the way, the AMA is a creation of the Rockefellers, which it needs to be designated as a terrorist organization. And then the state boards all of those people need to go to Gitmo and be waterboarded, or at least introduced to low altitude descent therapy.
They stripped Dr. Roger Hodgkinson from California. I had him on. He was part of the Ottawa Truckers, as well as, I can't remember his name. He's got a Jamaican accent. He was on Trump's board. They stripped him of everything. This is what they do to these people.
Yeah. They take away your birthright. Yeah.
And you have to, I don't even know how hard it is to get into medical school. I got to the base of Mount Everest.
Well, Dave should know, because Dave's in a parochial system. You know exactly what that looks like in the university system. It's the same parochial nonsense, right?
Well, except for
you're not tenured. You're a junior professor. I'm a senior professor.
It's actually not. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It may depend on the department, and on the university. In our department, junior faculty are valued at a very high level. They are considered the seed corn of the department, and so, like, when I would stand up and give a research talk to the prospective students to in theory to recruit them, I would tell them your best choices are the junior faculty. That's where the real action is. You should join their group. So we really do protect them. You also, however, have different disciplines having different levels of politics. So if I was in a medical school, it would be a completely different situation than being in a chemistry department. And if I was in the humanities, who knows what universe you'd be in. So by the book, Morganson's book is called These Are the Plunderers. If I were to list some other books for people to read if they want to get up to speed on the evils of the system, I would put in there Sickening by John Abramson. I'd put in there Follow the Science by Cheryl Atkinson. I'd put in there great one, not well known, is Moth in the Iron Lung, which is about the polio vaccine being a scam. And I would put in there Aaron Series' Vaccine Amen, in which he deposed every major vaccinologist on the planet, and using deposition tells the horror story of how complete lack of oversight exists in the vaccine world.
Pharma by Gerald Posner, Posner.
Pharma by Gerald Posner too.
That one will fuck your head up. The Sackler family. But
the Sacklers are a whipping boy, though.
Yeah, no.
Sacklers are a distraction.
No, Tim Dillon makes a great point. He goes, what they do is the elites will take one family and go, can you believe how bad this guy is? They do a really good job at beating the shit out of the tip of the iceberg so you don't look at the iceberg.
Dude, that same playbook is played by the government. Look over here. This is the guy that did all the bad shit.
I'm telling you,
Don't
Tim
look
Dillon's
over
not,
here at all
Tim
the other
Dillon's
shitbags
Tim
that
Dillon's
are
the
money
funniest man
laundering,
in the world.
trafficking children.
He's also a genius.
Yeah.
Tim Dillon was that. I don't know if this is a compliment. Listening to Tim Dillon in 2019, that's what got me. Don't clip this. That's what got me into satanic pedophilia. Because he interviewed Nick Bryan early on, and that's where a lot of the books I read before I started the podcast, The Devil's Chessboard, Family of Secrets, Franklin Scandal, is all from that. But no, he makes a great point of specifically the Sacker family. That's the point he uses. He didn't say whipping boy, but he goes, they'll choose this group. He goes, there's a million Epstein Islands. When they realize one of them gets found out, what you do is you kick them off and you go, can you believe that? Can you believe that? The Sacker family, they're not the only ones making addictive products, but they're a whipping boy. And then...
Well, I read Dope Sick, and it was very misleading in the sense that they would tell stories about how some guy would sprain his ankle, and the next thing you knew, he was a junkie. And I go, it doesn't work that way. It in theory can start that way, but you can actually take. You don't become a junkie because you got a prescription of a week's worth of painkillers.
No,
that does not turn you into a junkie.
It's a longer injury, and then
you have to continue.
It takes a long time.
Yeah.
And then you
come off.
Even OxyContin, it takes a long time. It's not like overnight you're addicted to it.
Exactly.
Because before
and you can also maintain a low level of addiction and not lose control of it.
Sure, absolutely. You can. Yeah, there are things like that, but the evil of what this. So you're right. It's not that simple. But the Sackler specifically, so they made this, knowing full well what it did in its addiction, saying that it didn't have an addiction. Meanwhile, as they were pushing it, we now know at that same time, I don't know if they're the ones that invented Suboxone or if they made one of the early versions of it. They knew that was eventually going to be a product they needed. So they were making that. When they got sued, they then took the money that they knew they were going to get sued for. They put it aside, and they were told they had to pay it within 10 years. They put it aside in a mutual fund and made like 400% and then paid out. So they made money on the payout of the thing that they were giving that was addicting to people, and then sold Suboxone. It is Gitmo. Sorry, Steve. I keep forgetting.
No, man. Yeah, but this is a salient topic because it's one of the things we're going to have to deal with, no matter which way this goes, whether it goes kinetic into civil war or Trump's the superhero and he declares martial law and rolls everybody up. Either way that goes, we still have to deal with the vaccine injuries. We still have to deal with what the downstream effects of mRNA are. And if nobody's talking about it, somebody needs to talk about it, because that's going to be the problem of a lifetime. Can you reverse the effects of some of these things? Because supposedly it alters your DNA, whatever the hell that means.
I'll tell you what it means. I know exactly what it means.
What?
So you get an mRNA. If you get a reverse transcriptase in your system, which can be included in the vaccine, if they decided the best way for the vaccine to work was to not only give you an mRNA, but to literally incorporate it into your DNA to generate a lot of spike protein, I wouldn't put it past them. I don't have hard data on that. But you can, for example, get a reverse transcriptase enzyme from another virus, and it will transcribe it into your DNA. And if it gets to the germ cells, or just gets to any cell, there's a huge spike in cancer. That's getting into your DNA. When you get a cancer with the vaccine sequence, and they have sequenced it, they're tracing specific cancers to specific batches now through sequencing. And so when it transcribes into your DNA, you now have it in the DNA. You now have potentially a tumor if that's what happens. Now, if it gets to your germ cells, what are germ cells? Sperm and eggs. If it gets to those, the next generation gets it. Now, Where did the vaccine collect after 20 minutes? In women, the ovaries.
The
Ovaries
highest
and
affinity.
testicles.
The highest
Yeah.
affinity was the tissue in the vagina. Dr. Jim Thorpe, Dr. Fine Touch in Canada. These guys came on my show and they did this and they showed the highest. It's not like kind of it happened. It'd be like it's like when you have those tables with magnets under them, when you know they have the iron shavings and you can like move shit around. It'd be like if you threw it all in there, it bounces everywhere, but a bunch of it clumps right there. You cannot tell me that is accidental. It is either a form of long-term sterilization or it is a way of passing on some illness to the next generation or weaken them or whatever it is. But it doesn't even matter what it is, because once we acknowledge that they can do reverse transcriptase, that's like saying in the early 1900s when the first Zeppelin went on its like military debut, and the guy made it, and it was like 900 feet long, and it made a very important thing. It was supposed to stay on a lake, but what it did is it rose up in Germany, or what was then Prussia, and what it did was it flew over the border of the neighboring country, and I think they dropped leaflets that said like "hello from the sky," and they came back. But what everyone knew what that meant was you can now fly and you can now drop things. Maybe not a leaflet, maybe a munition. Once we acknowledge that they're doing reverse transcriptase, and once we acknowledge that it's going into the reproductive areas, you can say it was for COVID. Well, what the fuck else are they doing? Maybe they want everyone to have low T. Maybe they want everyone to have celiacs. Maybe they want everyone to be insulin dependent.
We don't know. But we're also not talking about the lipid nanoparticle, right? Sam Sigaloff did a show on the lipid nanoparticle.
That's what Dr. Oddity Bhargava came on my show to talk about, was specifically that.
Yeah, that's the most dangerous part of it. It's not the spike protein's dangerous, but it's the lipid nanoparticle that crosses the brain barrier that's even more dangerous.
Very cytotoxic. Very cytotoxic.
And not only that, they didn't know, or it was intentional, how to homogenize the distribution of the lipid nanoparticles. So when some people would get the shot and they'd be fine, and then other people, like women I've interviewed who are my age, college athletes, and they are in wheelchairs and they talk with a slur, and their life is fucking ruined. Right, Dave? And
yeah, my dog just knocked my computer.
Yeah, your dog's working for Pfizer. David, Dr. Barger was fucking making me laugh. Dr. Barger was talking about.
That's funny, man.
It's so funny. This is found footage.
Well, I did a podcast this morning with Sean Newman, who actually came to my house. He was visiting me, and I had the dogs locked in the bedroom.
Never invited me, Dave.
And my wife let them out, not knowing I was doing a podcast. And they're happy as hell to see me now because they've been locked in the bedroom. So there's this wall of dogs leaping on me in the middle of the podcast. And so the dogs are becoming a part of the podcast.
I'm sure Sean appreciated it.
The mixing problem hit me like a truck one day when I was having a chat with Ryan Cole.
Dr. Ryan Cole.
And he made reference to the mixing problem, and all of a sudden as a chemist it clicked. So in biochemistry, you learn you don't handle RNA and DNA in anything but the most gentle way, because you'll break it. So if you're pipetting it just with a handheld pipette, you can break it. If you want to break up DNA into shreds, you just put it in a blender, you can break it. Normal molecules, that doesn't happen. Long stringy ones, you can do that. And the problem is, so you can't agitate it at a high level because you'll break it. And at the same time, you're making batches for billions of people. And so it's an oil and water problem where you've got the lipid nanoparticles at the top and the saline at the bottom, but you can't agitate it. So it'd be like if someone said, here's an oil and vinegar salad dressing. You've got to give it to everyone at the dinner table, but you can't shake it. So someone's going to get oil and someone's going to get vinegar. And so the batch dependence is potentially where in a specific batch your sample came from.
Dr. Bhargava did that with, I just made a note. I'm going to contact those doctors and see if they'll come on with you, Steve. Of course I do that without even asking you. I'm like, you're doing this now. But like Dr. Bhargava showed a PowerPoint presentation of just that. She goes, we don't know how they're distributed. You have these little, for reference, it's like one of them might, as you said, one of them might be, I don't know, maybe it's like the size of table salt. And it'd be like if the other one, your soup, so the soup I made for Steve, it got a couple dots of salt. The one I made for Dave, I accidentally dropped in a fucking cubic foot of sodium. At that level, they don't know how. Or worse, they do know how, and you could target populations with the one that fuck you up. Maybe states that are being resistant, maybe states that are you don't like. That is possible.
There's patterns in the data, and this is from years ago, so I'm only remembering it vaguely, that suggested that the vaccine was changing over time, which suggested they were experimenting over time. And so that they were saying, what happens if we do X? And so which would make total sense, right? If you think about it, what would a scientist do? Well, that's what they would do. But what I won't do is ever get another vaccine. By the way, that includes flu. So you walk up to the pharmacist and say, "Would you like your flu shot?" Don't take it. It's never made sense to me. I must admit, occasionally I would have said, "Sure, I'll take it. Whatever. Why not? I don't care." The flu vaccine is by definition out of date. By definition out of date.
What I think the mRNA was, I think there's multiple purposes. I think there's probably some reduction of fertility, some depopulation, some. What I really think it is it's a population group of N equals 8 billion. Now let's say the mRNA vaccine is, in theory, like nuclear fission. You can use it to vaporize a bunch of Japs, or you can use it to power a city. I think and this is my personal theory, and I have no proof for it whatsoever, but fuck off. I think they looked at this and said, this is the next thing the next level of medicine. This is the equivalent of, the antiseptic technique or penicillin or surgery. Is they looked at this and they said mRNA and its subsequent generations, as we get better, this is the Wright brothers flying, and this is the new technology. And what I think the power elite, whatever group or percentage that is they looked at this and said, we can use this to extend our own lives or make the quality of our lives better. How do we do it? Well, if N equals 8 billion, and you go, well, what about different populations? You go, get all of them. All, Koreans have different enzymes than the Irish. It's get everybody, black, white, young, old, men, women. You add this thing, I think there's probably multiple purposes to it. I think they probably want to fuck up certain populations. It was definitely a power grab, but I think they were also actually testing it because they want to see what happens, because they want to perfect it for themselves. And I know that is way out there, but that's my theory, is they just want to see what fucking happens. And there are other agendas woven into that, because it's like, well, if you're doing it anyway, then let's also, if we're going to kill Kennedy, let's also go fucking do this, but like, that's what I think it was. And that would make sense that they're changing it as they go. They go, well, let's see what happens if it crosses the blood-brain barrier. Let's see what happens when it goes to, the testicles. Let's see what happens when it goes to the ovaries. Let's specifically see what happens. How can we adapt?
Did anything come out of the Fauci papers, besides the fact that we find out, shock of shocks, he's an arrogant douchebag, and that he knew stuff that we knew he knew? I mean, if you read the Pfizer papers, you knew he knew. And so he did things that we knew he did, but it was not official. Did anything come out of it that told us about this motive question? Because it's the most speculative thing.
Motive?
Did it get released on purpose? Did it get released to cull populations? Is there anything of that flavor in there? Because I don't think there is, right?
I don't think it's come out yet, if it is, but I would assume that it's probably been scrubbed out, because I mean, who pays for most of Congress and most of TV? Big Pharma, right?
But the Fauci papers, is my understanding, did not have the redaction that the Epstein papers had, for example. Is that right or not?
They didn't remove anything, Dave. I mean, come on.
No, I know.
You know as well as I do that they're gonna protect the bread basket at all costs, and this is just chum for the
or they'll throw out Fauci like they do at the Sackler family or Epstein. They'll go, look at, we got the guy.
But you can't just go after Fauci. If you go after Fauci, you have to go after Daszak. If you go after Daszak, you have to go after everybody else.
I'm not talking about
NAID and NIH, and then you have to go after Gates and pharma and everybody that helped fund it. Then you have to go after the guys that made remdesivir because he knew that was toxic. Then you have to go after the hospital administrators that took all of the bonuses and the COVID money and the big pharma bonuses for pushing the vaccine. I mean, you burn down the system. That's I can tell you that's the logic they're using because it's the same logic they use for Epstein.
No, I'm with you. That's what should be done. What I'm saying is what will be done.
This is a public shaming is what it is. It's just a public shaming.
But I want to go back to what Dave said about motive, because that's one thing that got to me as it was happening was, you know, like everyone's like, well, it's a money grab. And I'm like, they've perfected the military industrial complex. They've perfected Korea, Vietnam, GWAT. Like they've perfected that money making thing. They're pretty good at it. They can fake the evidence. We're going over there. By the time it happens, 50 years later, it comes out. You go for Tonkin wasn't real, but by then they're all dead. I'm like, they've perfected that, and they're very good at making money that way. They're very good at the drug trade, make it illegal, bring it in by the southern border, and you know that's as Tim Dillon says. You know, the reason we don't bomb the cartels is because they're on our payroll. They've perfected the money making thing. To me, this was way too much work just to make a couple bucks. What is the motive?
Oh, it's not the money.
Exactly, which is where I'm with you, and I'm like, they know how to make the money. They'll do a 2008 bailout. Like they know how to do that. This was something that required a ton of work. It required every nation to do it in lockstep. What the fuck was the motive? I think it's going to be. I think they were testing it for their own. They wanted to see what happened, and I think what it is it's a very long-term depopulation. They're doing it very slowly. By the time you find out about it, it's like by the time you find out, like the USS Maine was probably bombed by us, but that was in 1898. You're like, yeah, who gives a shit? It's going to be 2130 by the time they realize, the reason why the population's 300 million is because they were doing this back in 2020. That's what I think the motive is. Sorry, I keep hijacking Steve's show. I keep screaming.
Well, what I'll tell you, the basal level problem is that scientists, the scientific community, which I understand because it's really just a level of enthusiasm. When they get a cool idea, they can't resist. They cannot. Like the guys who figured out that they could recreate dire wolves from dire wolf DNA. Mm-hmm. What they basically do is they map out the dire wolf DNA and they map out a regular wolf DNA, and then using sophisticated computer technology, they say, which genes do we have to replace to convert a wolf to a dire wolf? And then they do it. And then they have them in an enclosure. And the claim is, well, they're contained, so it's not a problem. Well, we know how this story ends. Someone gets out. And next thing you know, we've got wolves running around that are 25% bigger and more ferocious that we really don't want out there. And the question is, who gave them the green light? And the answer is oftentimes there is no green light required. Federal funding requires green lights. I'm not sure some guy in his goddamn elite, privately funded institution has any checks and balances. When cold fusion showed up, and the cold fusion was basically it was palladium chemistry, where someone said, look, if you look at what's going on in a palladium electrode in an electrochemical cell, there is fusion going on. And this was a earth-shattering claim. This is way above discovering the power of the atom. This was huge. And it turned out not to be true. There's still people who think something's going on that's important and they're not sure what it is. But something like 150 laboratories tried to replicate it and failed, which shows you scientists doing what they're supposed to do, and that is test things. But it also shows you that 150 guys didn't ask the fundamental question: if I somehow am able to achieve fusion in my chemistry lab, is that a bad idea?
Who's coming Who's
You know,
Right,
I'm convinced that all of our
these are standard chem labs.
yeah, I'm convinced that all of our modern day ailments came out of a lab somewhere, including polio.
fucking Lyme disease? Didn't that come out of
Polio's not a single disease is the problem. Polio's not a single disease.
But didn't they invent Lyme disease as a
Lyme,
potential
Connecticut, yeah.
Is it potential? Is it well?
Mhm.
That's where it got out. But what's the name of the fucking island?
It's right off Lyme,
Plum-
Connecticut, right? It's about 20 miles off Lyme, Connecticut.
Yeah. Well, the idea was they made it as a weapon to, if needed, they could destroy all the cattle in the Soviet Union. So where's the green light come from? I think a lot of it comes from DARPA, DTRA, BARDA, or the equivalent thereof of why do we need a hydrogen bomb? What's like, well, in case we gotta blow it up. I think that's where the green light comes from. Is well, this is whatever fucking reason we need this wolf. Like that's why.
You know, the cynic in me is I'm actually surprised that they haven't had an issue with mutation, right? Because persistent, non-persistent chemical agents, you throw a persistent agent in the environment, it stays there forever, like the forever chemicals that are in Ohio from the train wreck.
Mm.
And those are forever chemicals. They're in the food chain, they're in the water supply, they're in your system, and you never get rid of them. The question is how have they been able to escape some kind of a genetic mutation of some of the viruses that have come out of labs? I mean, I'm not a virologist, but I find it shocking that they haven't had mutations that have.
I would
decimated
imagine that there
population.
is something of what is it BSL? I would imagine that they have the equivalent of like a BSL 5 or a 6 somewhere, where they're not scared about it coming out and hurting us because they're psychopaths. It's just destroying their own world. I would imagine they have something that's the equivalent of Groom Lake, where it's the lab itself is fucking preloaded with charges.
I think that's called Fort Detrick.
I think that. No, I'm being serious. How do you?
I am too. I think it's USAMRID.
No, Fort Detrick is right.
No, I know that.
Or Ukraine.
No, or
Yeah,
Ukraine.
I was just saying Ukraine.
But if you actually have something where you're like, what the fuck, like something that could come out and fuck up the world forever, I legitimately think you probably have a lab underground somewhere, and they've probably had crazy mutations that we'll never see, that they didn't let get out because they have a fucking lab that is whatever BSL 7, where it's just nuked. That
brings up the question underground facilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a case in point. So in Buffalo, Washington, on top of a hilltop off 220th Avenue, there's a FEMA site, and people have no idea how deep that hole is. And having been in that hole, I know that hole is very deep. And there's a big complex there. That's just one of many, right? Supposedly under Dugway, there's a huge underground complex. Under DC, I know there's a huge underground complex. DC, Virginia, West Virginia, and in fact, I'm pretty sure there's train lines underground that go from West Virginia into DC. It's very sophisticated. We've been digging holes in the ground since 1972. Probably
before that. Have you read? Because you're touching on my favorite book ever, Raven Rock by Garrett Graff.
I haven't read it. No,
dude. I don't remember if I read it or not.
Dude, it is. I've had it on my show. He's an incredible author. No. He goes into like the first ones where it was like this kind of like weird hodgepodge thing they put under the White House with like a chemical toilet for the president, and then like FDR because he was fucking retard and he had the wheels that are glass to have a ramp. And then they went, well, actually the Treasury is, ironically enough, that one's stronger because that's where all the fucking gold is. So they started putting bunkers there. And then they called it the Beard Lot Project, which later turned into Raven Rock. And then Cheyenne Mountain, which was in the 50s, that one was public. And they stopped calling it because people know about Raven Rock, they know about Mount Weather, they know about NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain, Stargate, all that shit. They started calling it around the 60s. They started calling it the relocation arc because what it was almost like an electron potential field. It was hundreds of these things all across the nation, little tiny ones that there are ones that go coast to coast from the 70s, built on springs underground that are purely there to hand off maintaining communication with Air Force One, and that goes back to the 70s. These things are everywhere. How easy would it be to just turn one of them into a fucking lab? Let's see what happens. Let's do a crazy mutation. I'll text you, Steve. It's my favorite book.
It's super easy.
Well,
and I can tell you,
I just ordered it.
Having been in a number of underground facilities, trust me when I say this, they are everywhere. They're everywhere. And this is the funny part. Even in the classified environment, right, in a skiff, there's no comprehensive picture of just what we have underground. It's everything's compartmentalized. So the stuff I know about could be the tip of the iceberg of other very sophisticated underground sites. But remember, Elon's got the Boring Company, and they've been hard at work since he started that company. What the fuck are they digging? What are they building underground?
Every company Elon touches is deep state.
Yeah.
I rest my case. You just said it better than I could have.
The underground story goes back to Göbekli Tepe.
Well, yeah.
We kind of are taught history where this idea that you protect yourself by putting the people who you want to protect on top of some high mountain that's totally defensible, some castle on some hill somewhere, and it's impenetrable, when in fact underground was what people did, like Göbekli Tepe. There's another one whose name is not as easy to recall. And that you find these entire civilizations had lived underground, and so when the raiders came, you went underground.
What about the DUC, the DUCC, the Deep Underground Command Center, proposed under Kennedy? It was, and this was 3,500 feet below the White House. There was an elevator that went down from the White House, and I think there was one from like Congress, and you go across. It was so the president could go 3,500 feet, and it's not a typo.
Well, I hope they had air conditioning, because that's getting down into the hot zone.
Yeah, and they had different versions of a 50-person one and a 200-person one, but it was made for, and I swear you can read it. The documents are there to survive multiple, and I quote, 300 megaton air bursts or multiple 100 megaton bunker busters. Think about Tsar Bomba's 57 megatons. And they decided not to do it because I guess Johnson said like it's a tomb, and that's what later led to the ARPANET, so that these things could be connected. But they've been building this shit since the 50s and 60s. And I know this conspiracy
you
people
don't know if they decided not to do it. Let's start with that.
Oh yeah, they said we're not doing it. Okay.
Well, they said we're not doing it.
Oh yeah, okay. They said we're not. Oh good. I'll take
so
your
assume
word.
they built it and probably modernized it, and now Elon's making it bigger.
And why wouldn't you? And I'll give a shout out to my favorite conspiracy, which most people don't like at all, Phil Schneider, talking about all the nuclear powered boring things back in the 60s and 70s, and he was talking about making these caverns 5 miles underground all across the United States, linking all the bases in the Midwest. Everyone takes Phil Schneider and they look at him as like 1,000 times more unbelievable than like Balbazar. Man, go look up fucking Phil Schneider. That's
Steve,
the OG.
How deep can conventional weapons bomb an underground facility? How deep could you go?
Durandals can go, I think, 100 feet, 100, 200 feet.
Yeah. So
that's with the concrete. I can't remember the specifics of the nose of the bomb.
So those are the bunker busters where there are multiple explosions. So it goes bang, 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 bang through the rock.
And you can also do those repeatedly in the same hole.
The idea that Iran has a nuclear facility and it's not deeper is absurd, right? Yeah. So the idea that we bombed their nuclear facility is absurd.
Well,
if it exists,
that's where I was going to go. Yes.
So that whole thing was a ruse. Is the point? That whole thing was a ruse.
Wag the dog. Come on.
But here's the brilliance of the ruse. Trump says, and this is where Trump had my support. He says we bombed the nuclear facility. It's off the table. Iran then went and hit a U.S. air base that was irrelevant. And then they both turned to Israel and said, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, originally I thought that was going to work.
That was brilliant. Now, what I didn't see, hey, get out of there. What I didn't see coming was that he would bomb Iran in earnest. Not just clear, to say, look, we're going to come and we're going to drop some bombs in this shit. Clear your guys out of the way. They don't die. They say, we're going to come and bomb this airfield out in the middle of nowhere. Clear your guys out. No one dies, right? Deal. Let's high five. They do it. And then they turn to Netanyahu and they say, now shut the fuck up.
But and then you go, and then you go.
And they bombed Iran.
And then you go. No, it does make sense because you take the boogeyman off the table. The asterisk that we all forgot is that they have a video of all the important people in our country raping children to death, and so that they can. You forgot that little asterisk where they went. Yeah, bombing.
I'll believe that when I see it. Do I believe the doomsday tapes exist? Absolutely, I do. I was told they do. Does Iran have them? I don't know. Supposedly Iran hacked all of Israel's key leaders' cell phones and took a bunch of data off of those. Who knows if that's real?
Yeah, so they hacked us by hacking Israel.
Yeah, I want to go back to something though that you mentioned earlier, and it's about bunkers. Having been underground in launch control centers, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die on the surface. I do not want to be in a concrete coffin underground when something goes off, because when the lights go out, and you're in the dark.
That's what LBJ said.
I presume, though, they have independent power.
Yeah, but for how long, right?
Yeah.
They don't have 40-year batteries.
No, they could, but they could have huge fuel supply.
You want my honest opinion? I'll bet you some of these have nuclear reactors. I'm sure.
That's right.
That's
right.
Or fusion reactors, or 0-point energy, all the shit that they won't give us.
And the Iranians supposedly had all sorts of earth-moving equipment in the ground, so that when it came time to get back out, all they had to do was get out the bulldozers and bulldoze their way back out again.
There was a special air wing in the 50s under Eisenhower whose sole purpose was to whatever the early helicopters were, to fly. These were in bunkers outside of DC. These helicopters would fly bulldozers to the White House to clear it so they could dig down. That was in the fucking 50s.
Oh, so they have more sophisticated plans now.
Now, what Steve was saying about the launch facilities, that's not for everybody. Like, so when Dave was saying, I bet they have, running power, they're not all the same. That's, launch facilities. It's like, yeah, those are your two schmucks that turn the keys. You're fucking dead. You die. But the bigger elite ones, I would say that those absolutely are like city size. But the launch facilities, you're dying there with like MREs.
Trump is building a bunker right now, right? He's building a data center. He's building
ballroom.
Yeah, it's a ballroom. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That is. It's sorry to keep interrupting. But
hey, one sec. Somebody's at my door. One sec.
Yeah, you're good. Speaking of dying in a little facility like that and eating MREs, you can get Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, which sponsors this podcast as well as Steve's podcast. You can see it on the right side of the screen. But no, so the smaller ones.
You should hold it up. Do him a biggie.
Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. This guy's cool as fuck. Clayton, he comes on my show. He doesn't give a fuck. He comes on and he openly talks about satanic pedophiles. He doesn't care. But no. So the smaller facilities, sure, you're probably fucked. But the bigger ones, no, I'm with you. You definitely would have boring equipment down there. When you're looking at like the presidential size ones, that's what you would have. And this is all the shit that's like been declassified. So it's like, Dave, when you and I talk about like SDI and the stuff that we've heard about, that applies to everything. So the bunkers we hear about, why would they not be advancing that technology?
Oh, that's 50-year-old information.
Exactly. I mean, they have the Phil Schneider, who again, people are like, they hate him. But I don't care. Phil Schneider's my homie.
I don't know Phil Schneider. Why is this not ringing about?
I'll text you. It's one of he all he talks about is underground bunkers, and the reason why people don't like him is because he talks about aliens in New Mexico. But everything else he fucking talks about.
Yeah, that would not win me over.
Yeah, no, but that's like the one point that people poke at. if you take that out, everything else he's talking about is like, he's like, no, these are bunkers. He's like, they started under Eisenhower. They got better at them. And it's a nuclear deflagration where they instantly turn the rock into like into a tube so you can just keep going and get bigger and bigger. Why would they not advance that? They've advanced aircraft. They've advanced satellites. They've advanced computing. They've advanced mRNA technology. Why do we assume that they're still just using just shovels and, put in that elbow grease? They've probably got Operation Plowshare or Project Plowshare was the idea to use nuclear weapons to create like whatever we wanted, to create moats across the United States, to detonate them underground and create perfect caverns. Who says that they haven't done that?
I think they probably have. Steve, if I said a year from now, Iran, what's going on? Is it in our rearview mirror? Or is the shit still hitting the fan?
I bet you it's exactly what it is.
The strait. You think it's just going to stalemate for a year at least?
Well, supposedly we're moving 10 million barrels, 10 million barrels a month through the strait right now on a different corridor.
What's to a different corridor?
Yeah, through a southern corridor. I don't know if that's true, but
they can still give them hell, right?
Yeah,
that straight's not a wide strait.
So there's two narratives that are going right now, and I call them narratives because I don't know what the ground truth is. Narrative one is the nuclear conversation. We need to nuke Iran. We need to finish the job. That game. And then option two is we keep a limited supply of oil going and we keep detente, and we don't really see any action for the next year. That's what I'm leaning towards, because Iran. Think about it this way: Iran is set up for us to do some kind of a ground incursion, and I think that the adults in the room at the Pentagon have convinced the president that a ground incursion is suicide.
Hopefully, they've convinced him.
I'm assuming so. That said, however, I've been told by some folks that are still there that the people that have been relieved in the last couple of months were all opponents of using nuclear or even having the nuclear option on the table. That's the whole Mark Levin. We need to nuke them. Blah blah blah. So I anticipate, and I'm looking at the actions we're taking right now. I really think it's just going to be detente for several more months, and then we'll see what happens, because it's a lot of rhetoric. There's not a lot of action. There's no kinetic going on right now, which is amazing. And we've already said we're going to reoccupy two of the 100 plus bases in the region. We're only going to reoccupy 2. That sounds like a deal to me. That sounds like we've brokered a deal. We had the ink's not dry yet, but we've told the Iranians what we're going to do. Now, if Israel, and this is wait, let me put my conspiracy glasses on for this one. So if
I was gonna say, what if you just put? I was hoping you had a hat that had the fucking sideburns.
I was hoping you had a Groucho Marx dick nose, but
now you guys are both glowing, and I'm not.
But that said, let's just say if going down the rabbit, this is really down the rabbit hole, right? But we talked about this last night in the roundtable. What is Trump's best option to deal with Israel right now? Let him nuke Iran and then go, we're not getting involved. And then Iran nukes them. Problem solved.
I don't know. I as much as I'm not a big fan of Annie Jacobson, because I like listening to her audiobooks, but she's so obviously under the jurisdiction of the guy. She's not saying anything that they don't want us to know.
Well, she's also a phone sex operator.
What?
I mean, her voice.
But that's why I say it's conspiracy theory, right? Because that's one of those options that.
No,
if it was me, and
what I think she's telling us is truthful but profoundly incomplete.
I think she's realized at that point that she's being told all this stuff. She's going, "Oh, I am being."
I think if nukes fly, it's not over. I think if nukes are flying, we are in trouble. I buy that model.
Oh, I come from that business. That's where I cut my teeth. I will tell you that if one nuke flies, it will escalate exponentially.
Okay, I thought you were
literally
saying
within-
there'd be 2 nukes and it'd be over. Okay.
No. I was saying if I was Trump and I wanted to deal with Israel and get rid of the doomsday tapes, I would, and Epstein, because supposedly he's still alive. I mean, let's really go down the rabbit hole here, right?
Yeah, shut the fuck. Of course he is.
Oh, I have
Right.
no trouble with that model, by the way. I have no trouble with
Nobody does, right? Because Trump
No,
goes,
but-
"Yep, we're not doing this." But
Israel
that's not how
neutral-
that's not how the
Yeah.
escalation model works, right? The escalation model is as soon as the first one flies, everybody goes to DEFCON 4, DEFCON 5, and then it's just a matter of who pulls the trigger next.
Not only
The
that,
human by protocol, human decision making is off the table now. It becomes protocol driven.
PSYOP, SIOP.
Well, it's no longer a person saying what should we do. It is open up the manual. Now you fire nukes.
It's called
right?
the PSYOPs, the SIOP. Started on
Yeah,
you have a whole single integrated.
it's
operation.
medium rare, well done.
You go through it, and it immediately becomes that.
Or
because
extra crispy.
You
Right.
have minutes, and then with the
And
submarines.
that is Jacobson's model, which I think made sense to me.
Well, that's it. It all becomes it, and they've been using supercomputer. Like, it's always funny to me. It's dark, but like when you find out about like the U.S. has this new supercomputer, it's doing zeta flops, and it's like, what does it primarily do? It's always about running nuclear war simulations. Like, that's the one thing they always do. You know, it goes out of human hands. I think what Steve's saying, I agree with you. They nuke Iran. Iran says, "Fuck you, we're going to nuke you." What we're leaving out is Israel says to the United States, if you don't use your space-based weapons, which you absolutely have to defend us, then these tapes are going on every screen on the planet.
Yeah.
I texted you both Raven Rock as well as.
Then nuke should be used, but from a different country on a different country. I'll just leave it at that. If you're being blackmailed at that level, if they say, "Look, we're going to nuke Iran if you don't do A, B, C," I know who to nuke.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Yeah. And here's this will sound. I just don't care. Release the doomsday tapes.
Yes.
Show the world exactly what these people have been doing. But more importantly, when you do it, make sure you list all the old institutional money families that were behind all of that and used whatever security services or intelligence services to do it. Because somebody ran the op. We know the CIA and FBI ran roughshod over it and gave them protection. So out them all. Drop the list.
Like the thief on the cross next to Jesus Christ. If Trump wanted to redeem himself, and let's say he's on the videos and he's fucked kids, if he put that out, himself included, but that completely deflates the weapon of that, is everyone sees it. I've thought about that.
They can slow walk the release. So if he puts it out, so-called, if the minute word gets out that he's going to put it out, the process of stopping that will begin.
I know, but I think once
this
you do,
can't be a managed disclosure, Dave. This
I know it can't. That's my point.
I think what you do is, I think what
and
Trump does.
Here's what's something interesting. I'm going to go a bit ethereal because I know you've been talking to Sharita, Tommy.
Yeah.
From a numerological, astrological perspective, there is in September, October, or November, there is some kind of an unmanaged disclosure or unmanaged, what do you call it? Unmanaged
dissemination.
No, just unmanaged information that's released to the public that turns into disclosure. I mean, it lines up with the charts and everything else. And I'm just a lot of this stuff I'm just looking at going, well, let's see how it plays out. Let's see what really happens, right?
What about Terrence McKenna's it wasn't 0 point theory, but time zero. He had this theory. Terrence McKenna died in 99, but he had this whole thing. He's on all these psychedelics and shit. He was the man. He's out in the end of his life. He's living on Hawaii in his own island, taking psychedelics with early computers. Time wave zero. That's what it was called. Time wave zero. And he put this whole thing together based on ethereal shit. And he said 2001 is when the American empire begins its change. And he died in 1999. But I don't think that there's like, I don't call that stuff woo woo. I think it's science that we haven't mastered yet. I think it's like electronic.
I'll go a step farther. 30 years ago when I was a captain, I saw technology that wasn't operational yet. It was proof, but it wasn't operationalized yet, and it was fucking light years ahead of where we are right now. Light years. So I know they have the tech to go forward back. I know they have the tech to do a lot of different things.
WSM, weird science and fucking magic.
I'm telling you, I've said this before on many shows, and people are like, "Oh, you're full of shit." I'm like, nope. What have all the labs been doing? PNNL, Lawrence Livermore, YNL. What have they all been doing for the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years? You think they were just looking at nuclear energy? Or do you think they were doing other stuff?
Ben Rich was in line when he said, anything you can imagine, we've done it. We are 50 years ahead of what you can imagine. Star Wars, Star Trek, it's everything we've done. And if we haven't done it, it's because we decided that it wasn't worth it. We have we have technologies that could remove all the illnesses and woes of mankind, but it would take an act of God for these technologies to get out.
Because that's why.
That's
why we're still on fossil fuels.
That's exactly why we are. And that's what these bunkers have, is they are absolutely run on nuclear reactors. At the minimum, fusion if not, 0 point if not. Where do we use the nuclear reactors? To power hospitals? No. Two things. Aircraft carriers, so we can go bomb the fuck out of brown kids, and then nuclear submarines, so if we have to, we can also bomb the white guys. They use that shit because they know that's what really works. They have absolutely advanced that. I mean, Phenomena by Annie Jacobson, again, going back to ESP. Dude, they worked on all of this shit. We don't know if or when it works or how it works. But yeah, no, I think stuff like that, like numerology, I don't write that off.
Well, which one of the Weinstein brothers said that science, and Dave, you probably know this one, science was stagnated in the 70s.
It's Eric.
Yeah, he said science purposely
actually has argued that they purposefully stagnated the physicists.
Stephen Greer, people hate him, but he does have a great quote. He goes, how long does it take to fly from New York to LA? And how long has it been that exact same time? EM points that out. He goes, at what point did we stop seeing these fundamental changes? I mean, in the 50s, it was the sky's the limit. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's slowed down considerably when all mathematics show that not only should it not have slowed down, it should have accelerated.
Yeah. I mean, the tell is we've been in space since 1969, and we're still using brute force rockets to get to space. We haven't figured out another technology to get there faster.
Yeah.
Dave, you've been awful silent. I know you've got a whole bunch of things you want to say.
I'm going to keep running my mouth because I'm a fucking retard.
Oh, you're welcome to.
Space. I think space. I don't think Trump created Space Force. I think he declassified it, just like the NRO. People don't realize there are projects there are operations that are black. Fucking Descendant, Delta, they do this. Then there are projects where we're working on this new technology that are black, and those are more people. There are agencies, the NSA and the NRO are government agencies whose existence was not known to anyone, yet they operated for decades. We are absolutely, another Ben Rich thing, the U.S. military is amongst the stars. I mean...
Well, was it Gary McKinnon in the early 90s, late 80s?
Gary McKinnon and his space fleet, terrestrial soldiers versus non-terrestrial soldiers.
Yeah, terrestrial and non-terrestrial officers. He saw a Manning document, and somebody asked him, "Does that mean like aliens?" He said, "No, these are from what I gather, from what I saw, these are officers that are on planet and officers that are off planet."
Yeah.
I'm just pissed I wasn't one of the ones that got to go off planet. The same.
I'd love to. I fucking love to.
I mean, I had a pretty high clearance, but I never got into the secret space program or the Hua Space Force. Although Chance Saltzman, I did serve with him when he was a missileer. So
did we go to the moon? Did we go to the moon?
I don't know, Dave. We didn't do it in a rocket. I can tell you that much.
I'll tell you why I think we did, because it would have been an intelligence coup and a propaganda coup for the Soviets to track it and say that it wasn't going there.
Maybe the attempts to get us to not believe it are from the Soviets. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, but that now we're saying that they're all in on it. I think that we did go because I think that they would have proven it by now.
Well, here's one of the things that was so obvious when I was writing about Ukraine, and I hit the idea of the archives of the Soviet Union opening up when the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed, and I realized the Soviets had no incentive to release the archives because it would show their populace all the things they did that were awful to them. And the US had no interest in the archives coming out because the Soviets could show our populace all the bad things we've done to them. And so there were no winners in those archives getting out of control. And if there was a guy who got into the archives, I can't remember his name, with a handheld scanning device, which we now call an iPhone, and he got some stuff out, and that was about the extent of it. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was. So I wrote. I read American Betrayal. I read American Betrayal by Diana West, and then the follow-up, which I can't remember the title, which was a booklet. It wasn't even a book. It was short. And then Sean McMeekin said, okay, I notice you're chatting with Diana West now. Now you have to read Stalin's War, which Sean had written. It was like 700-page book. It was a non-trivial book. I think it might have been in there where he's talking about it. And so I realized that we got nothing out of the Soviet archives. They were buttoned down hard and fast. And the thing I was thinking about when Steve asked why I was quiet, I was thinking about imagine what they have behind the paywall on, for example, robots. We're seeing robots that can run, 100-yard dashes in about 11 seconds, maybe faster. I don't know. They look faster than hell to me. And those are the ones they're showing us. Now, I got to figure what's never made sense to me is a bipedal robot. The reason bipedalism evolved in humans is because it had to evolve from a quadrupedal organism. And we had to stand up.
Yeah.
Right. Evolutionarily, we benefited from standing up. So we were going to go bipedal, period. Right. It's because we were working with an operating system that already existed that we didn't get to rewrite. And so we evolved to stand upright. If you are designing a robot for some function, there's nothing about bipedalism that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think the other one I saw the other day, which I thought was really funny because it was presented as though it was a non-thing, was a mosquito repelling device, which is laser guided, and they showed the mosquitoes getting zapped by the laser. And I said, if you really think that was invented to zap mosquitoes, you're not paying attention.
I mean, Dave and I always go back to Shiva, the Shiva Star, and the Marauder program in the late 70s. That capacitor that would shoot the plasma projectiles at 10,000 kilometers per second as a Earth-based anti-space weapon. There's another thing I'm reading about in the book Imagineers of War about DARPA by Sharon Weinberger. This guy, Nicholas Christophilus, this Greek guy, had all these crazy plans, but they had one, I mention it all the time, about creating a basically a turret of multiple lasers somewhere near Michigan, and using nuclear weapons to carve out a tunnel, and then under the Great Lakes carve out caverns equal in volume to the Great Lakes. And they would use the Great Lakes to then dump through generators. They were going to drain the Great Lakes in 15 minutes, because if it takes 30 minutes for an ICBM, it would take 15 minutes. They would drain the Great Lakes. You can't compress water, so it has to be an equal volume. It would charge up the generators, and we would have this jack the fuck up thing that would be able to shoot down 3,000 ICBMs, decoys, and all.
So that's a big scale version. That's a big scale version of Lake Peigneur. You ever seen that video, Lake Peigneur?
No.
Lake Peigneur is the most amazing video. It's spelled Peigneur.
Hold on, say it. I'm going to look at this again.
Peigneur, and it was a lake in Louisiana, and there were barges and stuff on a pretty big lake, and they were drilling for, I think, natural gas or something, and they hit empty salt mines, and the lake drained into the salt mines, and the entire lake went down like a vortex. The entire lake, for a brief period, the backflow from, I think it was from the Mississippi, produced a 150-foot waterfall, which is by far the biggest waterfall in the state of Louisiana. And then it backfilled, and then the lake filled back up, and the barges actually got sunk, popped up, they were buoyant. And then, so the video is amazing. The video is really extraordinary to watch. And the whole lake just sucks right down in a vortex. So that's what you're describing for the Great Lakes.
Yeah, they were going to do it and drain it to charge up a capacitor to have a laser, because they're like, how do we discern what's real and what's decoy? And Christophilus was like, we'll just shoot them all down. And he was working with the Jason scientists, who I guess were like the precursors to ARPA, and they did the math, and they were like, this works. They said they didn't do it. But then 20 years later, they have the Marauder program, which they then stopped working on in 1990, and coincidentally said, we're not working on it anymore. And we're also classifying it. We're not working on it, though. So this idea that was proposed in the 50s, talked about it again in the 70s by building that capacitor, the 8-armed capacitor. Then we just stopped in the 90s. But
what's the status, by the way, on merging, whatever it means, the U.S. and Israeli military? Steve, can you tell us what they mean by that? Let's start with that. What do they mean by merging?
So it's the language of the bill is it's two sections. It's number one, sharing R&D and intelligence information, and then number two, it's contracting related. Basically, they have first right of refusal for selecting contractors. So if this is signed into law, which they haven't voted on it yet, thank God.
The Senate, the House voted, didn't they?
House voted. That's because Mike Johnson's a cuck.
Totally.
But okay, tell me the guy's not gay. Hair's always perfect.
Yeah, he's one of those Republicans one of those gay Republicans who denounces.
Yeah, they're all the same. Yeah, they all play
Lindsey
the part
Graham in training.
Oh yeah, only they don't have the lisp, right? And just like Judas Pence, I think he's a flaming homo too. But they haven't voted on it yet. But the language essentially says that we share, all of our strategic information with them, all of our national security information with them.
There's also a big money flow, right? There's a big.
That's the contracting. That's
opaque,
the contract.
That's right. So all of a sudden the spigots go wide open with no brakes.
Right. And we start building. Well, you know what's going to happen? All the contracts will go to Israeli companies, and they'll start building the weapons there, and they'll start going full tilt on the weapons, and we'll end up paying for it.
Right.
I mean, that's the intent of it.
That's right.
Share all your R&D, share all your intelligence, share all your space-based assets, share all your space-based weapon systems, and we'll build everything here so we can modernize it and give you the garbage.
So analogous to that, the ballroom is basically an Israeli operation, and it's like an Israeli embassy at the White House.
That's exactly what I think it is. Is that it's a command center for both the Israelis and the U.S. because they anticipate there's be some kind of a global conflict, and they're going to want to operate together in the same place. And the NDAA is critical for that, to give them the air cover to do it. And they're probably already doing it, but you don't build an underground facility with room for soldiers and medical facilities and food storage and then call it a data center. You call it a fort underground.
How do you build something like that without detection in the middle of DC?
It's very easy. It's very easy. You assign public-private partnerships, so there's no FOIA requests, there's no audit trail, there's no FASB 56. Then you move trucks in day and night, and you move them in as basically container trucks without any tankers or dump trucks. You put it all in a trailer. And they have trailers, the top opens, looks like a regular, tractor trailer.
But But the volume of earth would be huge.
But you're assuming that they haven't already dug something else to move the dirt through to where we don't see it.
So maybe a tunnel.
I assume not just a tunnel, but I bet you there's a freeway under there, and there's dump trucks going there 24/7. And
That's what I mean by a tunnel, right?
All those guys have been carefully chosen. They don't have any families. They get paid a lot of money to keep their mouths shut. Yeah, it's a very specific profile they choose for operations like this. And I guarantee you that, it's no coincidence that Larry Ellison and Scam Altman were in the White House on day one of his administration talking about data centers and then talking about mRNA and the ability to enhance the health of the public.
Speaking of two very hateable people.
Yeah. So I think it's all interconnected. I think everything that Trump has done to this point is interconnected back to that moment, probably before. Because Kash Patel said to me almost 4 years ago now, this is 22, he said it to me. I said, let's assume Trump comes back to power. And does he already know who he's going to pick? He said, we have our whole cabinet picked. We know exactly who we're going to put in what position. Now, I don't know how much of that came to fruition, but it lends itself to the idea that not only did they have a plan, but they had already brokered deals before he even ran. So we'll see.
So did Trump?
You have a dog snoring.
Yeah. Actually, she's trying to get on my lap. Did Trump, in your opinion, change, or was he on this charted path the whole way?
I think there was a deal brokered because Miriam Adelson wasn't in the picture in 22 that I know of. But I think a deal was brokered, and I think that part of the deal was all these other things. And look, I'm just counting one piece.
We won't kill you.
We won't kill you and your family. I don't know. Look, somewhere along the lines, and you and I think we talked about this when we were on Mike's show.
Might have been.
Somewhere in there was the threat. Because if you watch Dan Bongino and Kash Patel,
they were blinking Morse code while they were doing that interview.
Literally, you could have not. Yeah, poster child for our families have been threatened.
They were doing an imitation of the Korean POWs, right? The guy who blinked out torture with his eyelids in Morse code.
Except they told Bongino and Patel, they said, "Don't blink in Morse code either."
Yeah, right.
At the end of the day,
Bongino looked like he had died. I mean, I think Bongino did not realize what he was signing up for.
Nobody did. Not even Gabbard, right? Because Gabbard was the DNI, which means CIA was under her purview, DHS, NSA, all the rest are under her purview, and she left quietly. And I'm pretty sure she did it because she watched what happened to Joe Kent. And she saw that they villainized Joe Kent. At the end of the day, Dave, I don't know what changed and when he changed.
But you think something changed, though?
Absolutely.
I don't think this was the plan from the beginning. I think
again, these occasional discussions, we'll call them arguments, where some people think Trump was, absolutely from the beginning. We weren't going to get what we were hoping. And I have this sense that Trump did think he was going to change the system, and then reality stepped in and dealt with that little delusion.
How do you?
I think he genuinely thought he was going to, and so what is it when you get in there?
The one that people are ignoring for the most part, although I think they're starting to wake up to it, but they're not waking up to the reality of it. In my opinion, is his appointment of Warsh as the head of the Fed.
Yep. That was going to be my next one.
For a number of months, all I saw was new boss, same as the old boss. I'm going, I don't think so. Trump, if he wanted to hire a printer, he would have put Lyle Brainerd in there. He would have put, in the worst case scenario, Stephanie Kelton or someone really stupid. He puts Warsh. And if you had said pick one person who you think might actually be a hawk in the Fed, I would have told you Warsh. For 15 years, the guy's been hammering monetary policy for being irresponsible and this and that. And all of a sudden he appoints Warsh. I go, okay, so either Warsh has been lying for 15 years and somehow they're just going to flip him, or they're going to flip him immediately. It doesn't make sense. I believe that they are teeing us up, just like when they put Bernanke in there 2 years before the crisis. Just happens to be an expert at the Great Depression, which I disagree with his views of it, but I'm still giving him the expert of the Great Depression label. What a coincidence they put a guy who's an expert on the Great Depression right before we looked like we were heading into the Great Depression.
Yeah, I definitely think he's there for a reset.
And I think he is the guy who said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do what Volcker did. It's going to be harder this time because our debt's bigger now. Everything's a mess. We're going to knock down this Jenga tower, and you're going to be the guy who has to hang on white knuckling it as the head of the operation as this thing topples. And we're going to have to do our best to try to minimize the damage. But and he's not doing it for us. This is the banking system saying, okay, we've had time, we've had our fun. Now we have to shake the Etch-a-Sketch and start over again. And we'll make money on the way down. We'll make money back on the way up. But we've got to get back down. We've got to get back to equilibrium. And I think Warsh was chosen for that purpose.
I agree. And I would say that the Ukrainian war was initially intended to do the reset across Europe too, right? Blame it on this wider conflict, write down the debt, reset the currency, off to the races you go.
Right.
I think that there was I think everyone has this general idea that, like, whatever, from the early 1900s, there was this long-term plan for global domination. I think Trump came in. I think he genuinely tried to fight it, and I think he got in a couple punches. I think he drew some blood. I think they did COVID earlier than they wanted to, because we're not in a vaccine passport world. I think it fucked it up. I think they have counter moved, and they're on a plan B or a C. They wanted it to be this thing, but now they're going, we're going to do this. It's going to be much more brutal, but we had another plan. Well, and whatever it is. And I don't know what it is, but it seems like whatever the fuck it is it's dark and it's lethal. Did
you see Richard Grove on, did you listen to Richard Grove on Delingpole? I think I sent that to you.
Delingpole, I don't think his podcasts are public, are they?
Yeah. Hey, I listened to it on Spotify. He's on Spotify. It's
okay. I love doing podcasts with Delingpole because he's such a Looney Tune, right? I mean, he's really funnier than hell.
Well, yeah, he is. But Grove talks. He did the deep dive on the institutional money here in the U.S. The Delanos, the Rockefellers,
right,
and a bunch of other names that most people have probably never heard of. And he traced it all the way back to 400 BC and how the banking system started, and that the Pilgrim Society came over here in 1902, and along with the Fabians, and started building the modern education system and the modern banking system and the Federal Reserve, et cetera, and Jekyll Island. He does a very good synopsis of how all of that came about. Right. And I can't help but think that there's definitively a conflict going on between the bankers in London and the bankers here in the U.S. Because some of the moves that Bessent has made, good, bad, or indifferent, counters everything that the bankers in Europe have tried to push. And Warsh coming in tells me that they're not only planning for a reset, they're planning for a reset that's going to benefit the U.S. at the behest of whoever, and it's going to hurt Europe. What I can't reconcile.
Europe has the unique ability to hurt itself.
Oh yeah, you never interdict an enemy in the midst of destroying themselves. Just never do it.
Look at Germany. Holy moly!
They're deindustrializing, right? They're killing themselves. But where I was going with that is, I can't reconcile the trip to the UK to the King and dinner with the King with all the tech oligarchs. I don't know what that was all about.
Pedo King.
Yeah, but I don't know what that was about. There was an agenda there. What was the agenda? Because you don't kiss the ring for no reason. You go and kiss the ring for a reason. What was the reason?
Is it possible that none of the long-term plans have worked out, and now we have different factions trying to grab what they. Is it possible that they're not fully in control, and what we're seeing is rushed movements?
Your guess is as good as mine on that. There's too many things that have happened over the last 2 years that don't correlate and don't make sense. And look, I don't believe in
The
coincidence.
math ain't mathing.
No,
To me,
no, the calculus doesn't add up.
I actually find optimism in that. It seems like almost an emergent property. It's like the thing is breaking up, and it's going to be shaky. I'm not saying it's going to be necessarily without pain, but it seems like the grip of what, as the comedian Duncan Charleston says, history is merely a series of gatekeeping cunts losing one gate and then receding to the back one.
Yeah, but in these historical phase changes, 50 years is the blink of an eye. You'll be an old man when that blink is over. So the Soviet Union was a bad idea. Took almost a century for it to burn out.
Yeah.
Sure.
And look at, how long did China spend totally isolated from the world under Mao and these guys, right? How long is Europe been sucking balls, right? It just, and so the other thing that strikes me as my reading of history is that empires, which we are, when they falter, they don't get a do-over. That's it. And if you look at the various empires, it's not like you go, the British Empire, part 1, part 2, part 3. I mean, they tend to peak and go. And I would argue that Great Britain's been in a recession for 100 years.
Well,
And we have all sorts of arguments why that won't happen to us, but I'm sure the Brits had their arguments too.
It could be a very slow one. I think that when talking about like the stagnation of technology, I think that the technology that they're still developing or have been developing it seems like it just seems like, I don't know, the imagery I get in my head is like the entire pot's starting to bubble now, and they have no idea what to do because it's been a flat surface forever, and the entire thing's starting to bubble, and there's unintended consequences. And it's like the internet. The internet was for nuclear bunkers to connect to each other, not for us to fucking talk on here and Dave have his fucking pedophile thing hat on. Like, there's unintended consequences, and the further that technology gets from the norm, the more it goes from like, yeah, they're a couple of years advanced to like they're using 0 point energy to orbit Pluto. The more unstable those they're building bigger and bigger dragons that they're trying to hold on to. At a certain point, you lose control, and it goes just like we talked about earlier in the show with all these different medications. The global elite right now, they're on 13 medications, but it's different technologies that are all roaring and coming out of the ground, and the iceberg is breaking up. I don't think they're in control. I don't think anyone is. And it could be good, it could be bad, but I think that's what's happening. I don't think there's anyone.
I don't think it'll be good. I don't.
The reason I think it's good is
all the revolutions. The only revolution that turned out to look good was the American Revolution.
I'm not talking about
the others. The others really produced a lot of suck ass misery.
No,
not that they weren't good in the long run.
Yeah, no, the reign of terror. I get
it
what you're saying.
It was a painful aftermath.
I don't think this is a revolution in that sense, though. I think it's the system itself is breaking apart because of all of these technologies that they've gotten so advanced that they don't know how to contain them, like a virus or like some sort of. They've probably cracked AGI. They've probably cracked 0 point energy. They've probably got some fucking.
Well, the one that's scary is not AGI; it's ASI.
Yeah, AGI, ASI, and then the Omega point. Yeah.
Say that again. ASI. Tell me ASI.
When AGI goes super intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Instead of a,
you mean when it becomes like 2001: A Space Odyssey, when the computer's saying, "Dave, what are you doing, Dave?"
When it goes from
familiar
when it goes from 200 IQ to 2,000 IQ to 20,000 IQ, we don't know that hasn't already happened. If we're talking about Groom Lake and how advanced all that shit is, we don't know that hasn't happened. We don't know that these power sources haven't been that. We don't know what the fuck the space program is.
Well, that's the bottom line, right? We don't know what's going on in the background. We don't know what tech is there. We don't know what their plans are. They plan in 20 to 30 year cycles. They're probably at the end of a 20-year cycle. I do know this. Whatever they do, they have multiple lines of operation they can choose from. They never put their eggs in one basket. They always bet on multiple ponies. So we have 4 lines of operation in front of us just in this show that we've discussed: the war in Ukraine, the war in Iran, the economic system, and the medical system. All 4 of those are lines of operation that they're leveraging to achieve their means. And then the 5th one is the economic, right? They can go after the economic and do the reset, but what's the end state, right? We know that there's a certain portion of the elite that want population reduction to 500 million so it's manageable, whatever the fuck that means.
Deagle.
Yeah. But there's another faction too, and I keep coming back to this because a friend of mine that I've known for decades didn't even realize this guy was a billionaire because he lives very modestly. He said to me years ago, and it finally resonated with me about 10 years ago. He said, look, in a system where you have this many people with this much wealth, there's always going to be conflict. And you're going to have people that are invited to the table and people that aren't invited to the table. The ones that aren't invited to the table are going to do everything in their power to maintain their status quo and their wealth. And the first thing that all of them do when they wake up in the morning is figure out how to protect their wealth long term. That's what they do every morning when they wake up. They don't look at politics, don't matter to them. Nation states don't matter to them. Political groups don't matter to them. Social groups don't matter to them. Preserving their wealth matters to them. And that is their only fucking priority. Okay, I could see that. So you see a conflict between those invited to the table and those that aren't invited to the table. How pronounced that conflict is, your guess is as good as mine. But I can tell you that there was a deal made for Susie Wiles to be in the White House. There was a deal made for Bessent to be in the White House. There was a deal made for Kushner to be in the White House. And for the Israelis to say that Kushner is running foreign policy, that's a very dangerous statement. But it means that they have full confidence that that's the deal. So I think Trump did change, and I think it was through deals, because he even said, I made deals to get here. But we'll never know the ground truth. That's the bottom line.
He and his friend Nat Rothschild, when he said Nat Rothschild, he had to know he would light up the internet. He
just
had
the
to know
name
that.
Alone. Yep.
Just saying my friend Nat Rothschild. I can't imagine a more inflammatory thing to say than my friend Nat Rothschild.
Not to say the 5D chess thing, but you got to imagine
By the way, in case you haven't read it or the listeners have not, Robert J. Gordon's book, The Rise and Fall of American Growth. Notice its rise and fall of American growth is a brilliant book. It talks about what real wealth is, and it talks about how in the digital age, although people perceive we've created real wealth, you can't find it in the numbers.
I think it comes back to technology stagnation. I think it comes back to the trillions that are missing from the Pentagon. I think it comes back to just general themes we can see in all sorts of technological disparities, from the B-2 bomber to whatever, reactive armor to satellites.
Well, ask yourself a question, Tommy, because you're on a good vein there. Ask yourself a question. Why is it that the drone war in Ukraine is still raging basically unabated and we're still building the B-21? It's obsolete. Aircraft carriers, obsolete. Full stop. So the drones and the Orishnik missile have changed the landscape of the battlefield forever. There's no the Ukrainians or the Russians.
But that's why we're running it, is we're getting so much. No, we know what we have is obsolete, and we're running this because this is R&D. It's better than any fucking simulation we could set up. It's real life. We're running our Ukraine. You might as well be Nevada test site, Dugway Proving Grounds.
Oh, I'm sure we've tested a lot of weapons there. I'm sure we have.
No, but I think we are watching them, and we're watching how they use drones, and we're getting R&D. We are tracking every fucking movement, and we are using that. I guarantee you we have some crash course program out in Nevada about drones because we've realized...
You're giving these guys way too much credit. Let me tell you how that game really plays out, right?
Okay.
That ship briefs really well, but there's this place called the Pentagon that's sitting in Virginia, and it's full of assholes whose whole life is to block everything that isn't status quo.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting next to Secretary Gates, right?
Drones are not a superpower's best friend.
No.
The idea that we'll be a superpower using drones, that's like saying we'll be a superpower using crossbows.
Yeah. But my point is, the threat, as you see it, and the revolution of military affairs on the battlefield that's occurring right now has changed the landscape of the battlefield. And the Pentagon is going to be the last place on the fucking planet to recognize that and put it into implementation. I literally sat in the same room with Secretary Gates when the drone issue came up, the UAV issue came up over Afghanistan. And he's like, how much coverage do we have? Well, we have X amount of drones. Well, make more. Well, we can't make more. Well, why not? Here's the money. Go make more. And I want assets shifted from Iran or from Iraq into Afghanistan. And it took an act of fucking Congress to get those drones that were already flying flown over to Afghanistan so they could be used over there. Nothing in the Pentagon works and goes fast. What does go fast is the R&D side of the house. When private contractors have grants to go figure stuff out, that's when it moves fast. But operationalizing it, by the time it's proved to operational, 10 years. And I can tell you this is going to develop a hell of a lot faster than 10 years. So if you look at what Trump did when he did the speech about the elections, he set the table for a war with China, blamed him for the election interference, blamed him for mail-in ballots, blamed them for influencing our education system, blamed them for running psychological and propaganda operations in blue cities. He set the table. So the next, and I thought during the speech, what I would have done is start rolling people up during the speech, right? None of that happened. So
we can't win a war with China.
We can't fight a war with China. We don't have the logistics to do it.
It's not even clear. It's not even clear if you had something you could choose a menu and say, okay, give me 1,000 of each of these, what that would be. It's not clear to me how you would ever fight a war with China.
Well, it's going to be a sea-based fight, and it's going to be on littorals, and you're going to have a pretty big naval presence, more than like 94 ships.
But I think China can destroy us economically. We step on Iran economically. I think China could just crush us.
They could, because they're well. That's one aspect. Now ask yourself how many Chinese CCP operatives were moved in under Biden and are infiltrated throughout our country.
Sooner than that. So I was at Cornell in the early 80s when I remember when they said that China was going to let its people keep some percentage of what they created. And it's like, whoa, something just changed, right? You actually grow and you don't have to give all the food to the state. You get to keep a little for yourself. That is a fundamental sea change. Then next thing you know, we're one of 6 schools that were going to be sent chemistry students that were hand selected to be in the PhD program for their particular skill set.
Spies.
Right. But also, you take 1 billion people, they can send some awfully smart guys, right? They have statistically a lot of smart guys, hardworking. And then after a number of years, I noticed they weren't going home. they were getting jobs in the United States. My first thought is, if you're going to train Chinese students by sending them to the U.S., don't you want them to come home? And the answer is, it depends on why you're training them. It depends on why you're sending them. And the answer is, we now have truly countless numbers of Chinese scientists and Chinese expats of all kinds who are in the United States, who they're not necessarily spies, but if you were working in China for 20 years and all of a sudden China and the US got into conflict, you would not find yourself with an allegiance to China. You would naturally gravitate to your home country. And so we are going to have the Japanese in World War II problem, Japanese Americans in World War II problem, China style.
Only more of them.
Only much more of them.
There's
much
way
more.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, and also if you want to set up economic relations with China, you want guys here who can facilitate that. That would be Chinese in positions of great power in Silicon Valley and various places who understand China.
Yep.
So we don't need a bunch of gringos who are trained to understand China. We just need Chinese. And I happen to be loosely affiliated with a guy named Stephen Coughlin. He's on Twitter. You ought to look him up. You ought to follow him. He's former NSA. I met him in our Zoom group that we met twice a week for a total of 5 hours a week for a couple of years. It's still active. It's just not as interesting now. And he turned out, I didn't know it at the time, he was a radical Islam expert. What I didn't realize until I was reading a book one day that said he was the GOAT of radical Islam in the Pentagon. I go, holy shit, Stephen? And then so I reached out to Stephen and asked, this was Diana West's book. I said, Stephen, is Diana West legit? Is her book correct? And he said, oh yeah, she's absolutely spot on. She had to go into hiding after writing American Betrayal because they were so pissed off. But Stephen said to the Pentagon, we've got to understand radical Islam from a whole different lens if you want to solve any problems over here. And they basically blew him off.
Don't forget
They did not want to hear it.
Dr. Robert Spencer, the other GOAT of radical Islam, who was removed under Obama. He's been on my show a zillion times. I've got his books all about it. He was FBI, CIA. He was the guy that they would tap and they go, tell us how this works. What's their mentality? How do we do this?
But I don't think they want to. I don't think they actually want to know. It's not a particularly open-minded group, as Steve is saying.
I don't think they want to.
They're stuck in concrete. They're stuck in concrete.
I think
you change the system through funerals.
Yeah,
when people die.
And what Steve's saying about I'm with you. The Pentagon, it's a fucking barge and it's not moving. It's it's like
here's a good example. So just to tell you how entrenched they are. So my unit, we supported Pacific Command, and every year we'd go out for a 2-week exercise called Terminal Fury. We'd go out, it's command level exercise with the sync pack, and we go with all the J shops up there at Joint Headquarters pack. And we worked with the Navy. We were sitting, in fact, I was an Army major running the Navy Comm Center at Makalapa during the exercise. And my guys established a reputation for finding real world intrusions during exercises. And, it was routine for the Chinese or the Russians to break into our stuff. And you try and take that back to either Fort Leavenworth or up to Army CERT, which was First IO, and get those guys to change doctrine, and they're still stuck on the on-off switch. We fix things by the on-off switch. No, you don't. There's a whole lot of forensic things that need to happen and chain of custody and a bunch of other things that need to happen to establish and repudiate who was in your network, and the on-off switch doesn't do that. I mean, I battled with those nitwits down at Fort Leavenworth for probably 5 years before they finally acquiesced and said, yeah, we need doctrine for incident response and intrusion detection, et cetera, et cetera. But it took 5 years. 5 years of me beating my head against the wall with all these major command directorates. And by the way, the guys at NSA, some of the best people I ever worked with, because they all got it. They were like, yeah, we need to fix this today. And some of the brightest guys I ever worked with were there. and they were doing stuff that nobody else was doing. So the problem in the Pentagon is not the fact that people are dying, because people were dying in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they still had their heads buried in a 5-year budget cycle, and they couldn't pull their heads out of their ass, and nobody could pull their heads out of their asses. I mean, one of the best briefings I was ever at in the fishbowl was when Secretary Gates was talking to the Air Force. And the Air Force was briefing him on cyber. Sir, we own air, land, or we own airspace and cyber. And he was like, no, you don't. You don't own cyber. That's a joint mission. Well, sir, we spent all this money on ads. Just stop. Stop today. And literally, overnight, stop. But that was the only time in my career that I ever saw anything like that happen. Everything else took months.
What do you when he says we don't own cyber? Is he saying like
the Air Force was trying to say we own the cyber mission, and Gates said, "No, you don't. No, you don't.
Like a different department owns it.
No, every service has a cyber play because they all have network.
Okay.
Every service and NSA. By the way, NSA know the net, know the threat. That's their job. You don't do that. So, nice try.
I think that again, in my completely retarded logic, but I really do.
We're trying to rip Tommy's soul out.
Oh, dude,
his nose like an Egyptian mummy.
Dude, it has been pulled out 1,000 episodes ago. I am a shell of a human who I just talk and I don't even think anymore. The words just come out of me. I'm a dead man. I am Weekend at Bernie's. I just talk into a camera. I don't even exist anymore on this plane. I feel nothing. That being said,
you're AI. You're very convincing, by the way.
That being said, right? Yeah. Well, the only person that's met me is Tom Longo, and Colonel Bennett. I think it makes no sense because there is something that is not just tactics we don't understand, right? There's you could say, why are we doing this? Why is the NSA building that? And you're like, oh, 50 years later you find out that they're gathering signals from this, and in the 50s they're bouncing shit off the moon. But imagine goals you don't understand. Okay, so you could say maybe like fucking dirt farmers in Afghanistan don't understand that we want their lithium, right? Or you could say, go on whatever you want. Imagine goals beyond that you don't understand. I think that's what we're seeing. I think it's some form of AI or AGI or preemptive ASI. They are not only using tactics that are beyond our understanding, but they have goals that are beyond our understanding. So it's not just how are they going about it, like, oh, they're trying to get the gold and the oil. It would be like right now if some AGI was running something and they're like, yeah, the reason why that tomatoes just went up 3% in Venezuela, and the reason that China is now seeing a spike in, atherosclerosis in their older populations, that's actually all linked to the reason why fucking the temperature's changing in Madagascar. Like, that is what a 2000 IQ would look like. And I think that's the only thing that explains what's going on, is it seems like it's all breaking apart because there is something that I believe unintentionally has become emergent. It's either it's become emergent over the entire internet or it's in some lab that broke out somewhere. It's doing something. And I think that's what it is. I don't think anyone's in control of it. I think the people that have been in control of it for thousands of years are trying to say, no, we still got it. We still got it. But it's breaking apart. And I'm not saying it's good. It's just the only thing that makes sense to me is that something is pushing all of this and it is stripping everything apart and no one knows what to do. That's also if you can clip that, that's my insanity, please. If I ever get arrested, just clip that right there and be like, he's unstable.
I think it's twofold, right? I think the first thing is the people that the institutional money behind this, the Nate Rothschilds, They don't have a vision of the future of how they want it to look, other than they want everybody to be subservient and they want slaves. And
That's
they
that's the thing you've always pointed out that I think is
yeah,
brilliant.
they don't have a
vision for the
vision.
future. They have a vision for now.
Well, yeah. And so one of the most, I'm going to say one of the most visionary CEOs I ever worked for was he had a very, very innate skill to be able to translate his vision into a mission statement that everybody got behind, and it turned into reality because he had a vision of where he wanted the company to be and what he wanted it to do in the marketplace and what disruptive technologies he wanted to bring to the table. And I can tell you, it's infectious when you get somebody like that has a vision. Name one fucking person that's in a leadership position across this planet that has a vision, a clear vision that everybody can get behind. Not one.
Elon?
He doesn't have vision. He just wants to go to Mars, which I think is a terrible idea. Why would you want to go closer to the sun? I don't get the point of that. But my point is, because they don't have a vision, that's why I think you're seeing things break down. And then the other side of it is everyone in leadership positions across the planet is a psychopath. And they're not going to get along. They'll get along for a little while to achieve, their pet issues and their pet projects. But at some point, that's all going to fray too, because you can't put narcissistic people in the same room and expect them to get along for very long. It's just not how the game's played.
I think if you look at what Elon's doing, I think it actually makes perfect sense if you wanted to replicate a way to inhabit a celestial body. Like, what are the first things you would, even when you're doing construction, right? The first thing, the guys come in with the lasers and they're lining everything up, and they bring in the bulldozers, and then they do the seismic, and then once they realize it's there, they put in the piles, then the concrete, and then the blah, 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 blah. Strip away all association or opinion on Elon. What is he really doing? Electric cars. Okay, so we have a form to run off some form of solar, so you have movement. The Optimus robots. Okay, so you have something that can move, and it doesn't matter what's in the atmosphere or the lack thereof. Okay, you have Starlink. Okay, so you have a way to communicate in a shell around the planet. What else is he doing? Boring. Okay, so if you got to get underground, that's what you would do. And then lastly, how would you enhance yourself to plug into this? Neuralink. What he's making is a substrate, an infrastructure for, you can apply that to any planet. It's a way to inhabit and take over. I think that's what it is. And if there is a secret space program or it's AGI running this shit, I think that's what it is. It's making a template on, it's making a standard operating procedure on how to make a planet habitable. All the things he does, it all links up to one thing. Like he said, the Cybertruck could, very simply, with a couple adjustments, be sealed to be airtight. That's what he's doing. It's like when they build new bases in Afghanistan, or Steve, you would know this. They have the thing where they drop the bulldozers, then they drop the artilleries, and then they drop all the HESCO bags. They have it. They have an SOP on how to do it. That's that's what it is. You know how to do it. You establish your perimeter. That's what he's doing. Is a template, and I don't think it can be denied on how you would come to and inhabit a planet. Radiation, you go underground. Need something on the surface, you have robots. How are you going to build fiber optic lines? No, it's all going to be through satellites in the sky. And then how are you going to do it? I don't know. You plug into the AGI. That's what he's. And how are we going to run it? We're going to run it off electricity and solar. That's what he's doing. I truly believe that. It's a template that you can throw onto Mars or to Pluto or to some fucking planet around Proxima Centauri. That's what it is. And to me, that is the beginning of a galactic exploration. I'm not saying that it's being done by humans or it's done by AI or some synergy thereof, but that's what it looks like to me. They're building these nets, and you're throwing them, and they're sticking to things. You throw toilet paper over a tree on Halloween, and you get stuck on it. That's what all of these things are. If you look at everything he's doing, these are nets or webs that you can throw at planets, and they get stuck, and they get wrapped around. Communication, go underground, robots, AGI, rockets. How the fuck do you get there? That's what he's doing. and I don't even know if he's in control of it. It could just be AI. Sorry, I keep hijacking Steve's show and screaming.
I mean, look.
I kind of
go ahead,
dissociate
Dave.
when I go into rants like that. I forget.
Go ahead, Dave. You've been sitting there quiet. And
Physiologically, we can't live on Mars.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be us.
Right. And it's too far away I understand the idea of the moon. That's a reachable entity. I can't imagine what you'd get from having things on Mars. I'm guessing, the space race to the moon was about building weapons, right? It's that simple. They made a great story, and then they spent billions of dollars basically building up our
ability to put things in. Yeah.
Land-based weapons. And I think Mars is still the same thing. It's justifying he's hiding SpaceX-based weapons development and communication development under the dream of going to Mars. I don't think it's selling. I think that unlike the race to the moon, which everyone bought into, everyone wanted to go to the moon. It's just if SpaceX works well, we're going to pay for it because it's going to be tax dollars and inflation analog of tax dollars. It's not going to be wealth creation in any normal sense.
No part of what I'm saying is an agreement or an endorsement of what's happening. It's what I think is happening. And physiologically, I'm with you. I don't think we can go. I don't think it's us that's doing it. I think it's the next intelligence that is emerging. What we are seeing is it's bigger than the opposable thumb, the agricultural revolution. What we are seeing is the difference between the proto-hominids without a neocortex and those with it. The cognition, Terence McKenna, the shimmering consciousness is the shimmering surface on the lake of the brain. That's what I think. We're looking at this going, well, that doesn't make sense. It's because it's the next thing that is coming out of us. It is what replaces the monkeys, the humans. Where'd the monkeys come from? I don't know, some shrew that came out of the ground after the asteroid. That's what's happening. And
but this thing has no evolutionary component to it.
What do you mean?
Well, then what you described there, the shrew becoming the monkey, becoming humans, that sort of thing, each stage has an evolutionary advantage.
Mm-hmm.
There's no evolutionary advantage to creating cyborgs or whatever you want to call them to go to Mars. It doesn't. So it's going to be a huge consumer of resources, and at best, it's just going to be a trophy. Going to the moon was a trophy. The wealth creation, to the extent it exists, is all the technology. When we invented Star Wars, the idea, of course, everyone said it'll never work, which was preposterous. The Russians, they called it Star Wars to undermine it, right? To say, well, it's just science fiction. This is stupid. And what struck me from the very beginning is, well, if this is science fiction, would you explain to me why Gorbachev takes every opportunity he gets to try to get us to stop doing it?
Meeting with Reagan.
The answer is because Gorbachev knew the Ruskies could not keep up in a technological race, and that it risked being a technological race. It wasn't going to be because of, I don't think it was just because of defense. It's just at that point in our history, when we decided to do something big and grand, shit happens, right? And the Ruskies didn't want to have to keep up with shit happening in the United States. They were going broke.
Back to the 50s. Look up Project 137. Look up Project Argus. Look up Project Bambi. Like the Disney character. Look up Project Brilliant Pebbles. They were doing this shit in the 50s and 60s. When you say the evolutionary component,
that's when the Ruskies had not yet. But there's no evolutionary component to that still. There's no
unless you take intelligence just take intelligence. It's right. Intelligence. I look at it as the ultimate evolutionary component. You were leaving behind this fucking sagging dying DNA thing that can get infected and shits and sneezes and vomits, and you are turning it into, shut up, Steve, you're turning it into this machine that is what the fuck are you laughing at? I'll fucking come over there and kill you.
Dehydrated Bitcoin and bunker beans is what I'm laughing at.
Yeah, no, but you should buy Heaven's Harvest Prepper food in case it goes wrong, right? Thank you, Steve. Correct. You should. But in terms of intelligence, I'd say it's the ultimate evolutionary advantage. You are leaving this behind. You're becoming silicon and metal based. Like you said about bipedal organisms, you don't need to be that. You can be a spider. You can be a drone swarm. And what are you doing going to different planets? It has nothing to do with what's there. They are dispersing like pollen. It is now backup, so it doesn't matter what happens to the Earth. And then the next thing is to get away from this planet, the solar system entirely, in case the sun burps and you have a Carrington event, which that's what's happening. Is it's intelligence just as a basis. It is the ultimate evolutionary advantage. It is leaving behind its biological. I forget who said it. It might have been Marshall McLuhan, that we are the biological bootloaders to the machine gods. It is coming out of us and turning into a biologically resistant form. It can take any form and it can go anywhere, and its time doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter about death and evolution. It's self-improving. To me, it's the ultimate evolutionary advantage. It's not good for us. That means we're dead. I'm not saying this is good, but it is the ultimate evolutionary advantage.
So what did the Romans leave? Well, what did the Romans leave?
Roads and aqueducts.
Right, but those are kind of trophies. The Egyptians left pyramids, right, that are still here. But the fact of the matter is the Eastern Roman Empire left more than the Western Roman Empire, to the extent they at least invented a numerical system that would eventually lead to calculus and things like that. Roman numerals, as long as we were using Western Roman numerals, we were never going to invent calculus. And as a consequence, if you actually ask what did Rome leave, they left civilizing properties in the far reaches of the empire that wouldn't have made it there very quickly. So, but they left a lot of chaos. And if you look, hundreds of years after they built the Parthenon and various things, people were grazing sheep in the Parthenon, and people were sleeping in the bathhouses. They were using them as beds. And so this is a classic Joseph Tainter model where the society simplifies. And so after all this happens, society tends to simplify because it overreaches, and you end up losing so much. It's like, actually you see it in Star Trek, the famous episode where Cochrane invents warp drive. If you look at that society that he was in that admittedly fictional world, it were Quonset huts that looked very space age, but it was a very simple society. It was an agrarian society again. And then supposedly invents warp drive, and we got tech again. We went technical again. But I think that is what happens. You tend to sort of ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And so I don't think all this effort is going to leave us with any more than just sentient beings made of biology and some knowledge. And by the way, our digital knowledge is the most fragile thing. When they discovered that Lyndon Johnson had recorded all of his conversations in the White House, they had to find a way to play them. And it was, I don't remember the name of the thing that the technique, it sounded familiar to me a little bit. They finally found a working model of the thing required to play them at the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
And so this digital world, this vast amount of information is so fragile. There's so many broken websites. There's so much, like, was it public broadcasting system just lost something like 50 years of their episodes Now, I don't think it's lost. I think it's legally bound up because the company that they were sourcing to store them in the cloud went belly up. And all of a sudden, public broadcasting lost 50 years of 70 years. I don't know how many years of episodes, but decades of episodes. Now, it turns out some other company has it, but they have no legal obligation to give it to PBS. So now there's a battle. So I think they'll end up getting it back somehow. But that illustrates the problem that so much of our fantastic tech is connected by a very thin thread.
Sure.
It's like if I stored everything that I knew on 8-track tapes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, as an aside, that's why I get hard drives for all my podcasts, and I do 3 things. I put them in a waterproof bag, and then I put the waterproof bag in a Faraday bag, and then I put the Faraday bag in a fireproof bag, and it turns into this brick. And then what I do is I physically mail them to friends of the podcast that are in special forces, because I know that their homes are very hard to penetrate.
Now, are these on floppy disks that are this big, or are they on the big floppy disks?
They're on.
The problem is you're describing this belief that somehow that will protect you.
To the best of my ability.
That's right, but I think the best of your ability could suck balls. Now, here's the other funny thing.
Absolutely.
PBS.
Steve, shut the fuck up.
PBS could have backed up their own data with hard drives bought at our campus store. We probably have enough in the storage facility part of our campus store.
It's like NASA says they lost all the
telemetry. It was 50 terabytes. A 4 terabyte hard drive is costs probably $1,000, maybe a couple $100. I don't know.
No, I got 120 terabytes on my desktop.
That's right. They didn't do that. They didn't do that. So, we destroyed all sorts of television shows and stuff because they wanted more space. So they just got rid of it.
What about the things where they use like femto lasers to where they can inscribe the entire Bible on a crystal the size of a piece of rice?
But then that tech will go away. And then you'll have something the size of a piece of rice, which you say, the Bible, I'm told, is on this piece of rice here, but we don't know what to do with it, right? So I think this idea of the world getting better tech.
Probably what the pyramids are. It's probably what Göbekli Tepe is.
I think at least they had tangible things. They inscribed things. Rosetta Stone. Talk about the guys who really nailed it. The guys who created the Rosetta Stone really left quite a legacy. So I think this idea of the world going super tacky and without any Joseph Tainter, which by the way is another great book. Joseph Tainter, I think it's let me find it. If you haven't read Tainter, it's way better than Gibbon's book. Joseph Tainter. I think the collapse of complex societies, I'm about to find it, but I'm going to confirm that Joseph Tainter. The collapse of complex societies. He talks about the simplification of societies. When they collapse, they simplify.
Absolutely.
So you're talking about an infinitely complexing world, and I'm saying I think we have simplifications in our future.
I don't disagree with you. When we look at these civilizations, they all hit these high points and they drop, right? They leave the high water points. But ultimately, over the centuries and millennia, we do progress forward, as messy as it is.
Very slowly.
Very slowly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is the best way to go about it. I'm just looking at it purely.
Well, I'm not evaluating the quality of the idea.
No. I'm just looking at it as like entropy, enthalpy, and biology. I'm like, this is something that is just dispersing. It doesn't make it better. It's just dispersing, and it's going to try to pollinate across the galaxy. I'm not saying it's good. It's probably how you go on it's probably why I haven't been to the fucking moon. It's because we found something on the back of it and we went, what the fuck is this? And it's mentioning, the pyramids and Göbekli Tepe, and somebody said, hey, if you talk about that, we're going to blow your head off. I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying it's sturdy. I'm saying biologically, it seems like what's going to happen is it's just going to...
Provided Star Trek is a documentary of the future, I still think they're going to look back, future generations, assuming the reason Star Trek was such a popular series after it didn't sell well while it was on the air, but it became a cult favorite after they were in reruns. It was an optimistic view that we survived and excelled, right? That society didn't blow it. We didn't nuke ourselves, things like that. But I think at some point in the future, we're going to look back and say, remember when those guys wanted to go to Mars? What a bunch of clowns they were, right?
I think so. There's two parts to this that I think are very interesting, right?
You know, Steve's been laughing at me this entire time. He's been fucking making light of me.
You know,
he just can't get a word in.
What cracks me up? What cracks me up with Dave is, yeah, your plan sucks balls.
It's the best. I explained this intricate thing, and Dave's like, "Yeah, fuck off."
Yeah,
but you're right. Yeah.
I think what's interesting though is that, you know, the thing that I think you're discounting is, who's to say the AI they're using right now isn't already, who's to say we didn't embody an intelligence that was already there, right? There's this whole conversation around, you know, alien intelligence or ancient intelligence, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of different directions you can go in that, right? But I think at the end of the day, oh, that's hideous. That is hideous. What is that?
He's a satanic cannibal. He's a satanic cannibal.
No, it's a hoodie I designed back when I did graphic design. It's all Area 51.
I thought it was a Christmas sweater, man. I was going to be like, oh, you need to like take that back.
No, the pockets are actually high-res scans of the Roswell newspapers.
Well, now we know why he's single.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you can see my other graphic designs. But no, I think what's the one? I think Steve, you've said it. You know, in cyber, it's like the first fucking thing they teach you. If you find a USB, do not plug it in. Right.
Oh yeah, that's so.
Well, then what was the Roswell craft?
You know,
we plugged it in.
Let's just, for argument's sake, because we're almost at 2.5 hours and I've got a life to get back to. For argument's sake, let's say for all intents and purposes, we do figure out, we crack the nut on interstellar travel. We crack the nut on going to different planets. I don't want to be a fucking android, right? I like women. I like being with women.
Now you've gone too far.
I don't want to be a robot that can't enjoy life. I mean, great. You want to expand knowledge, go out there and do that. We'll figure out which eunuchs want to go do that, and they can do that till the end of time, right? There's plenty of people that will give all that up, but there's some value in being human. And one of those things is that machines will never have is empathy. They will never have that ability, right? They'll never have the ability for love, compassion, all those things, right? Those are the things that make humans unique. And why would you give that up? As messy, as dirty as all those things can be, why would you give that up to go and give up biologics? There's no point in that, right?
I'm in 1,000% agreement with you. That's nothing I want to be human. I want to fucking eat a Big Mac. I want to wake up and be tired, or I want to experience Christmas and love and all that shit. I'm with you. I would never merge with it. I think that's the end of that. That sounds horrible. I'm simply looking at what do I think probabilistically will happen. Is that I don't want any part of it. I'm just saying I think that's what's going to happen, and it might not even be the end of us. We might just kind of watch it go and then be like, what the fuck was that? And then just realize, we'll be using telescopes and, the Hubble, and we'll be like, oh shit, it's the rope, the self-replicating nanobots they're on Pluto now. We might just be watching it like, oh shit, we like set off a bottle rocket and it just left us. I don't want any part of it. I'm just saying, what do I think will happen?
Yeah, I definitely think they're trying to angle us towards a cybernetic, or what do they call it? There was a show where they called them something.
The Borg.
No, they were basically skin jobs, where they were androids, but they had human organs, they had machine organs. Anyway, they're definitely trying to angle us towards that. But I would make the suggestion that, because it's just a suggestion. I don't know if it's real or not. I would anticipate they probably do have AI that's way more advanced than what we're seeing just in Gentic and in OpenAI. Because look at how fast those have progressed just since they were introduced and where we are now. In fact,
public in the commercial, the shit that
the conversation with Jeremy really opened my eyes. And I deal with Claude and Gemini. By the way, Gemini's retarded. It's absolutely retarded.
Totally.
Claude is not as retarded. Hermes has its retardation.
Have you heard?
I haven't messed with ChatGPT in a long time, but
heard of Kerrigan AI? It's not that bad.
My point is, that's what we see. If you go back to our conversation about weapon systems, they're probably 10 to 12 years. And again, I've said this on 10 different shows now. Remember, in Trump's first few months, they swore in and commissioned 4
all the
tech executives from AI into DOD. Why would they do that? Because they probably got some shit there that's off the rails and they don't know how to control it.
What did they do with the H bomb? They brought in the H bomb had a budget 10 times larger than the top 10 corporations in the United States at the time. Who did they bring in? They brought in the head of Chrysler, the head of Ford. They brought in all these guys secretly. The guys that were building cars, they were like, we just want management for building rockets. They did all that shit, and it was classified for decades. And I'm with you, Steve. Why would, if they have the B-21, if they have the B-7, why would they not have some form of AI or AGI that's even 5 years ahead? Let's say it's not 50. Let's just say
it's way ahead.
I believe it is. But let's just, for the people that are so against it, let's just say 5. Look at 5 years ago. Somebody tweeted something great the other day, where it was, I don't know what it was. It was like, I don't know. It was like Charlie Kirk. I don't know, shooting, I don't know, Janet Jackson or something, and and it was photorealistic or whatever the fuck it was. And somebody said the funny thing is all the arguments in the comments would make no sense in 2021. People would be like, "What are you talking about? This is a video. This is very clear evidence." Versus now, the comments we're making of it's so clearly AI. That's 5 years. Let's just say that they're only 5 years ahead. They're not. They're fucking 50. Why wouldn't it be something beyond our imagination? None of this is
sure it is, right? And that's the danger area.
I think I think it went off the rails 20, 30 years ago.
Probably.
I don't think we're in charge of it anymore. I really don't.
Yeah, there's probably some truth to that. Because I look at some of the stupid coming out of DOW and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. No sane human being thought that was a good idea.
Look at Bongino and Patel. Now apply that to the world governments. Do they not, a lot of them look like they don't know what the fuck's going on?
Well, they're not calling the shots.
Yeah, exactly.
Those guys are just the front men.
Exactly.
Yeah,
whoever's behind them, it's AI or AGI or ASI, and people are like, it can't be.
Or just powerful people who aren't the front. As they said, the guys who rule the world may not have Wikipedia pages.
Of course they don't. You don't know their names.
Well, Nat Rothschild, we do.
Yeah, no, you don't know their names. They celebrate Hanukkah. But the point is this: I
think love you keep coming back to that, Dave. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it bothers me. It bothers me.
No, I think it took off a long time ago, and I think that's what's going. And I don't think we have any control. I think Elon's a front man. I think he probably does some of the shit. But I think I don't think Sam Altman. I think all these guys are just faces.
Altman has no skill. It turns out Altman is not a techie. He's not a visionary. He's actually a pitch man.
It's actually all pushing forward. And when you look at things, when you learn about Sprint ABM, the anti-ballistic missile that went 0 to Mach 10 in, I think, 10 seconds? And that was wild. And that was declassified. And then you find out that wasn't even the one that they were going to use around the White House. They had a different one called Hybex, went 0 to Mach 10 in, I think, 2 seconds. And this was back in the late 50s. My point is,
Tommy, by the way, before we go, did you see Did you see Cullen's Jimmy Dore interview?
No.
You want to check that out? So we did the podcast with Joe Kent and Cullen kept trying to get to his drone theory, but it was a short podcast. We were talking to Joe Kent. It just didn't fit. Well, Jimmy Dore gave him the time of day, and Cullen's model has gotten much more detailed, much more sophisticated, and it looks like he might be right. Just for you to check it out. It looks to me like I've never bought the exploding Mike theory. I've never bought the Tyler Robinson theory. Cullen's drone theory looks awfully good to me now.
I think he's correct.
Right. And so, and there's others who are taking it seriously also.
Which means
and it's super tech. It's super tech. So you want to check that out.
That's let me just so I remember the theory. Basically, they rolled drones out of an aircraft that was flying over the area. Drones came in.
A super high tech aircraft. Only two known. Only two of its kind known.
Yeah.
Not super high tech. It's like a leer.
So the plane's ripping along at 40,000 feet, doing
Comes
Mach
down.
whatever. Drops to 200 feet off the deck, right? That's low. Drops to near stall speed. Takes off again. A couple hours later, Charlie gets whacked. The plane returns from 40,000 feet. Apparently, this is traceable. Drops down, same drill, takes off again. And the theory is, first run they were dropping the drones, second run they were picking up the drones. And then those same planes have been traced, believe it or not, the claim is over Candace Owens and Baron Coleman's house.
Yeah. And when you look back into Vietnam, where they were not only doing the drone drops from the B-52s, but doing these rough crash courses on how to reconnect them 50 fucking years ago.
Yeah, the tech in Vietnam I had grotesquely underestimated. But again, the obsession I have with the Kirk story is, first of all, I don't like the idea of a sovereign state assassinating politically important people in our country, right? If they want to do it overseas,
That's our job.
In our country, that's our job.
George Carlin. That's our fucking
but what's
job.
also true, it is either Tyler Kirk, Tyler Robinson, or a very big conspiracy, a monstrous conspiracy. And so the other thing that tells me unbelievable amounts of information is watching who. So if you think that that Robinson didn't do it, I'm on the same page. If you're confused by it, I get it. If you're not paying attention and you think Tyler Robinson did it, I'm okay with that too. But there's people who I know are watching, who are out there saying it is undeniable Tyler Robinson did it. Those guys have just reached the I don't trust you category, period.
They're
prominent guys.
Trust the science, take the vax.
They have chosen a team. And I don't, I think if you sit there and you go, geez, there's things I don't understand and this, that, you're okay. But the guys who just say overwhelming evidence, he confessed this and that, I go, bullshit. If you want to claim your source material is CNN and that's where you get it, fine. But Megyn Kelly's source material is not CNN. Tim Pool's source material is not CNN. These people are unambiguously choosing it. Robbie Starbuck shocked the shit out of me.
It's two in my opinion. It's two explanations. It's that they are either they're part of the system, they're paid off to do this, or it is they don't want to uncover it. You don't want to look at 9/11.
No. Then you just shut up. Then you just shut up.
No.
Then you just no. You will not. If you ever see me stand up here and say, unless the trial plays out and I look at the evidence and I say, okay, he did it. I got it. They finally have convinced me. But if anytime between now and then, if you see me stand up and say Tyler Robinson definitely did it, you should be watching for a gun pointed at the back of my head.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is they're either on the team through the carrot or the stick, or these are people that just don't want to touch it because it means it all looks.
No, if you don't want to touch it, you don't touch it.
No.
If
Because
they're saying it's overwhelming evidence, they're touching it.
Look at the people. Look at COVID. Not everyone had a gun to their head. A lot of them just said, "Just trust the science. Trust the science. It's the safest election."
And do you trust them? Do you trust them?
No, not at all. But what I'm saying is
that means they chose the other team. They chose the other team.
But they're not being quiet. What I'm saying is, you're saying that you just shut up. No. These people, they don't want it to break. Santa's still real. The WWF is still real. These are retarded faggots who don't want it to break apart.
Okay, but if you're in a position of authority, and you choose to spout a narrative that's demonstrably crazy,
you're either getting money, a gun, or you're scared.
Right. You're not saying
alien.
I'm not disagreeing.
We forgot aliens.
You're not.
Throw aliens in there.
If you want to say I don't want to touch it, that's when you shut the fuck up. It's that simple. So you watch the people who are not saying anything about it. Either they don't care, which is a totally legitimate response, or they're saying.
Obviously, he's over target because the NSA just cut his speed. And I'd like to thank you for joining us on the Black Pill Express today. Our travel was 2 hours and 34 minutes. Please fasten your seatbelts and wait till the train comes to a complete stop before you unfasten your seatbelts and depart. You can't make that up. You just can't make that up.
That's amazing.
That is too goddamn funny.
I think you got to end it there. I think it's perfect.
That's exactly where I'm going to end it.
Steve, thank you for having me on your show. Everybody go into the description, check out Steve's Twitter, buy Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, give Steve some money. I'll put it in the description. This is perfect. Don't even let him come back on. Just end the show. This is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Steve.
Let me pull him off stage. There we go. He's off stage. So, yeah. So look for this in the show notes. Tommy will post this on his channel. You'll see this in 2 different places. I'll be back on Monday. God bless. One team, one fight.
Yeah. All right, Steve. Thanks for having me on.